Good morning. Welcome to the second hearing of the Committee's inquiry into the management, maintenance and operational issues at Calvary Mater Hospital, Newcastle. I acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. My name's Dr. Amanda Conn and I'm Chair of the Committee. Before we commence questions, I'd like to make a few comments. At our first hearing, Mr. James O'Brien, who's employed by Honeywell as the Facilities Director at the Calvary Mater Hospital, declined to appear even after the committee resolved to summon him. The committee again resolved to summon him to appear at today's hearing. However, his legal representative advised that again he would not attend. They further advised, quote, "Our client's position remains that because of the Cullen, Vice President of the Legislative Council of New South Wales 2025, NSWCA 278 sections 7 to 9, inclusive of the Parliamentary Evidence Act, are invalid. The result of this being that Mr. O'Brien cannot be compelled to attend the hearing," end quote. The committee is disappointed by Mr. O'Brien's decision not to appear and answer important questions about building maintenance at the hospital. As of yesterday, the committee received a submission from Mr. O'Brien responding to allegations made about him, which has now been published on the inquiry webpage. I ask everyone in the room to please turn their mobile phones to silent. Parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses in relation to the evidence they give today. However, it does not apply to what witnesses say outside of the hearing. I urge witnesses to be careful about making comments to the media or to others after completing their evidence. In addition, the Legislative Council has adopted rules to provide procedural fairness for inquiry participants. I encourage committee members and witnesses to be mindful of these procedures. Welcome and thank you for making the time to give evidence today. Could you please state your name and position title and swear either the oath or the affirmation?
I'm Dr. Sarah Coombs. I'm the Executive Director of Aeromedical and Special Operations with New South Wales Ambulance. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Would you like to start by making a short opening statement?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you. The committee is interested in speaking with yourself as a representative of New South Wales Ambulance today in the context of the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service, which is a private contract from New South Wales Ambulance, as I understand it. I'm interested, perhaps as an opening question, to understand the structure under which that operates. So who's responsible for what under that partnership?
So our aeromedical contracts with a variety of operators are essentially service delivery contracts. And under those, our operators provide to us the aircraft, the aircrew, engineers, maintenance facilities, and they lease and manage the bases on our behalf.
And the current agreement with the Northern New South Wales Rescue Helicopter Service, what's the current contract period?
So it's a 10-year contract period, so it commenced in 2017, currently ends in 2027, May of 2027. There's a 5-year extension option, which has not been optioned yet.
Thank you. As you would be aware, there are a number of really serious issues that have been raised around workplace culture, staff and safety at the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service, including in the media. How has New South Wales Ambulance responded to those concerns?
When we were first made aware of those concerns, obviously we take any allegations of workplace misconduct, unsafe culture very seriously. We simultaneously reached out to our operator to make inquiries and ask for certain artefacts to assure ourselves of the allegations, their response to the allegations, their intentions going forward. And we simultaneously reached out to our own staff and through the local health districts for the New South Wales health staff that work and operate at those bases and in those aircraft to provide them with support, both welfare support and remind them of any internal reporting obligations, but also to go back through our records since the contract commenced to look for any evidence of any of these allegations coming through our reporting networks and and anything we might have done to evidence them or investigate them ourselves. Excuse me. We have continued to engage with Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service around the independent review process that they have commissioned. Whilst that is not our process to manage or intervene on, we have maintained oversight of that, and we will be expecting to receive a copy of the report, any recommendations arising from that report, and any action plan necessary from the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service, so we can assure ourselves that the matters are being dealt with appropriately.
Okay. In your answer, you just said that ambulance had maintained oversight of that investigation. What does that mean? What aspects do you have
oversight? In terms of engaging on a regular basis with the operator on the progress of that independent review, asking for sight of the terms of that independent review, and reiterating our and the government's opinion that it needs to be an open and transparent reporting process, while obviously some of the process of the review will need to remain confidential for the individuals that are giving interviews to the review process. We wouldn't expect, to see anything identifiable in the report, but we will expect to see the high-level report and the recommendations and an action plan.
Thanks. And if I can just clarify one other thing before I go to my colleagues. You mentioned that some of the employees are employed by the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service and some are New South Wales Ambulance or New South Wales Health employees. Could you clarify who's employed by who under this arrangement?
So under the contract, this service provides the management structure for their organisation, the pilots, the aircrew officers, the engineers and the ground support staff. The clinical crew are provided, the critical care paramedic by New South Wales Ambulance and the critical care doctor by the relevant local health district. So for the Belmont base and the Tamworth base, that's the Hunter New England local health district. And for the Lismore base, that's Northern New South Wales local health district.
Okay. And under that fairly complex model, who's responsible for governance and compliance?
So New South Wales Ambulance is responsible for the contract governance and compliance. The clinical governance is initially oversighted by the retrieval service of the local health district, but there is an overarching committee structure for the state, and each of those individual services report in to a statewide medical retrieval clinical governance committee.
I might go to my colleagues if they have questions.
No, I'm okay.
No question. Are there questions from the government?
I've got a couple.
Yeah,
Chair.
go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead, Mr. Sivell.
Please proceed to the chair. Yeah.
thanks. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Coombs, for your hearing and for your evidence so far. I wanted to ask, in terms of the review that the service are undertaking, Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service undertaking, you mentioned it as being an independent review. What steps have been taken to ensure the independence of that review, given it's something that the service have essentially commissioned an external party to do?
So the service has commissioned an independent legal firm to undertake that review. They've formed a subcommittee of the board that has oversight of that interaction, but the review itself, all interviews with staff and the writing of the report are being undertaken by the independent party.
In terms of, concerns and how an employee might raise concerns around, things to do with the operation of the service, what are the current avenues and pathways available for staff to raise those concerns?
Thank you. We have a number of processes where concerns can be raised. We have a very robust integrated risk and safety management system across all of our aeromedical operations. And in that, we have safety reporting mechanisms. So staff are encouraged to report any safety concerns, even if it's ranging from an incident to a near miss to they've recognised something that could be improved or done differently. So safety and quality reporting, which goes into our combined reporting system. And we have an associate director of aeromedical risk and safety internally to New South Wales Ambulance that reports directly to my position, that assists in managing that across our network. We also have the normal New South Wales Health, New South Wales Ambulance reporting mechanisms. So either through the IMS reporting for clinical equipment related issues, or directly through the managing misconduct, grievance, procedures into our professional conduct and integrity unit in New South Wales Ambulance. We are really encouraging of a just culture across aeromedical operations. So it's, I wouldn't say a no blame culture, because occasionally there is blame to be allocated, but we certainly take the approach that when we're assessing it, we almost have a flow chart that we work through with people that are raising issues with us, because the majority of issues are system issues or human errors rather than a deliberate intent to do the wrong thing. So we have a very robust reporting culture. As part of our due diligence, when these allegations arose, we wrote to all of the staff involved that have worked on any of our northern helicopter bases over the last 5 years to remind them both of reporting mechanisms and obligations that are in place, but also of the welfare and support services that are available to them. We also reached out to our local health district medical retrieval directors to offer them the same services if their staff wanted to reach out to the New South Wales Ambulance Support Services. We also offered that to all of the New South Wales Health staff as well.
And so for the staff within the service that may not be directly employed by New South Wales Ambulance or New South Wales Health, are those same avenues available to them, to your knowledge, in terms of concerns and raising concerns within the service?
There are reporting mechanisms available in the service and staff support services available to them. I'm aware that Westpac Rescue in 2022, in response to some legislative changes around the Respect at Work Act, did revamp all of their cultural programs, their Respect at Work programs, and their staff support and welfare programs in line with those new legislative changes. But I don't know the details. I would need to take a question on notice if the committee wanted more information.
Thank you. That would be helpful. If you can take that on notice, that would be helpful for the committee. Thank you. My final question is around the Aeromedical Control Centre. So my understanding is, so that's where your inbound calls are received. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's staffed and manned by New South Wales ambulance staff. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the Aeromedical Control Centre is under my portfolio. It's the Aeromedical Control Centre is staffed by a multidisciplinary clinical workforce, so paramedics, nurses, and critical care doctors. We take all of the referral calls for any critically ill or injured patients that need transfer across the state, and any patients that need transfer over 250 kilometres that have any significant medical or monitoring support requirements. We undertake a clinical triage of those patients to prioritise them in terms of clinical need, timeliness of transfer, but also to determine the appropriate clinical escort team for that patient and the appropriate platform for that patient. So we then determine how to get the patient in the right time frame to the right destination with the right clinical crew accompanying them.
And then just in terms of the clinical crew, I know I did say that was my last question, but in terms of the clinical crew, you have a relationship with NETS, is that correct? And are they part of the broader service?
That's correct. So NETs are part of the statewide aeromedical retrieval network. They will do their own clinical triage of cases of paediatrics and neonates. And then if they need an aeromedical asset to undertake that transfer, they'll contact us at the Aeromedical Control Centre so that we can allocate them an appropriate asset. Those assets can either be road retrieval assets, helicopters, or fixed-wing air ambulances.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, just a quick. So this structure with so you've got your outfit sitting above within government, basically overseeing this Westpac helicopter service. Is that right? And they're sort of on a contractual basis.
That's correct. It's a
So
service
with those layers of reporting and governance, because we often see this, and without sort of wanting to have a predisposition towards insourcing everything under the sun, because that's not feasible either, but it seems as though this is quite a common thing right across government, where we've gone through a period of outsourcing everything we can and then putting in all these layers of governance and regulatory oversight, which end up being quite dysfunctional in some circumstances, and this is obviously one of them. I just want to get your views on whether or not we're better off just looking at bringing it all back in-house and then having less layers of oversight and regulatory burden because there's direct reporting lines. I mean, you sort of have, being in that space, you'd have a good feel for that, I'd imagine. Have you got a view on that?
I think it's a really specialised area. We're effectively operating a small airline service, and that needs a significant level of expertise and experience. I think it would be really hard to manage that in-house with a relatively small fleet in a very specialised area. If we look across at jurisdictions, certainly across Australasia and across a lot of the world, the service delivery model is what is most common. So outsourcing the detailed aviation aspects of the service delivery, but maintaining the governance and oversight centrally.
Okay, thanks.
I had a few follow-up questions for this in current investigation, and my colleagues have already asked a number of questions about it. How have you ensured that all current and former staff of the service, regardless of which employment pathway they're under, have been supported to participate in that investigation?
So we have reached out on a number of occasions, both via email, via letters, via personal conversations with the staff. So my management here have been reaching out individually to staff to offer them support, but also to remind them of their ability to volunteer to be interviewed as part of the independent review process.
Okay. And has that included former staff as well as current
Staff for the previous 5 years.
Okay. And what was the reason for stopping at that 5-year mark?
So the contract went live in May of 2017. And so we have a number of staff that, particularly the local health district staff, that move on around health, have maybe come from overseas and gone back overseas. And it would have been particularly challenging to go back further than that to make sure that we got hold of everybody. And as far as we can ascertain, the allegations really relate to the last 5 years. We haven't been able to find anything previous to the 5 years relating to our staff.
Okay. And I'm just trying to understand, you specifically mentioned the start of the contract, which was 2017.
Yes.
Why was the decision made at 5 years and not to go back to the start of that contract, which we're now 2026, so it would be 9 years?
Essentially for the reasons I just described. So the number of staff and the mobility of those staff outside the system would make it really difficult to make sure we're getting a representative sample going back that far. From our perspective, from New South Wales Ambulance, we have a fairly consistent cohort of staff. The LHDs, the staff are more mobile. And for Westpac Service, obviously, we've had to rely on them reaching out to their previous staff because we don't have oversight of their staff, individual staff under the contract.
And this particular current contract is due to expire in 2027, which
Correct.
is getting closer.
Absolutely.
I previously asked former Commissioner Morgan about the status of that contract, and I understand an extension or a new one hadn't been entered into at the time that this committee last held a budget estimates hearing. Can you update us on the status of any discussions around a new contract or extension, or what's happening after 2027?
So there's an option to extend the contract for 5 years after 2027. We haven't enacted that option yet. We have been in discussions with the operator about what a potential extension might look like. But as Commissioner Morgan at the time indicated, we will not take any action on enacting that extension until we have seen the review, the recommendations and action plan, and had chance to consider that and its impact on whether we do want to enact that future extension or not.
Okay. And what's the anticipated timeline for receiving the result of the investigation?
We don't have a definitive timeline yet. We are in continuous discussions with our operator to get a timeline. At the moment, they are indicating the end of May, but that has been a movable feast since January. My understanding of that moving timeline is that far more staff indicated they wanted to be interviewed as part of the independent review, and obviously we want it to be as comprehensive a review as possible. So whilst we are continuing to encourage a timely completion, we don't want to do that at the expense of a comprehensive review.
So just,
Yeah,
can I
that's
finish
okay.
this train
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thought?
yeah.
Under the current contract, you said there was an option to extend for another 5 years. Is there a deadline to enact that option?
There's no deadline per se. 6 months before the end of the contract would be a transition time if another operator was going to take over. So we would need to have alternate arrangements in place 6 months prior to the end of the contract.
Okay. So this is all fairly urgent.
It just sort of
Go ahead,
follows on
Mrs.
a bit
Mitchell.
from that. But in terms of, I guess, making the decision whether or not to extend, are there certain sort of KPIs or factors, like what goes into the final decision making around whether you continue with the same operator?
I mean, it's essentially the same as if you were undertaking a tender process. So when you're doing the evaluation, you're looking at the ability to provide the service delivery record, value for money, as well as risk and reputation.
Okay, so is it as sort of rigorous as an initial contract negotiation, or less so when it's an extension?
No, it's pretty rigorous.
Okay. And then just in terms of the sort of overview, and you did, I think, probably touch on this a little bit, but what does New South Wales Ambulance do to ensure things like the appropriate sort of training is being done, the certifications are being met by staff, the clinical governance, patient safety standards, all of that is in place while particular contracts are sort of ongoing?
So we have a contract management framework. So we have regular monthly contract meetings that will go through service delivery and KPIs that are in the contract. We have an annual contract review process that looks at the contract and the service provision at a high level and forward looks towards the next year. As two sides to that, there are operational review committees that dive more deeper into the service delivery components, particular mission profiles, for example, availability of aircraft with maintenance schedules, etc. And then regular clinical governance committees, and that happens for each operator and clinical governance in the north. Each LHD will have their own clinical governance meetings. In the south, they're all New South Wales ambulance bases, so we oversee it for the south. And then those feed up into the centralised statewide system reporting, so the Medical Retrieval Governance Committee, the Medical Retrieval System Governance Committee, and then that feeds up into a Ministry Critical Care and Specialist Governance Committee.
And sort of how much of that is made public along the way in terms of those sort of standards being met and guidelines and operational outcomes?
I'm not sure that a significant amount of it is made public, if I'm honest.
Because I guess my question, I mean, and, you know, notwithstanding some of the media interest in some of the issues of late, but I guess particularly for sort of rural and regional people who rely heavily on these services, I think having confidence and transparency is probably a good thing. And I'm just wondering if part of the issue is that some of that isn't made public when it could or should be. Is there, I mean, happy for you to take it on notice, but I'm just sort of interested to know if there's reasons why there isn't kind of that public accountability piece with some of this information.
We definitely have consumer representatives on our Medical Retrieval System Governance Committee.
Yeah.
We have regular governance meetings with the local health districts, but we don't have consumer representatives on those.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of things the committee could look to recommend around that sort of transparency piece, that was all. But, I mean, even if you wanted to take that on notice, if there's anything you can provide back around any kind of public reporting or where information is available more broadly to the community outside of those consumer reps, that would probably be useful if that's
certainly.
possible.
I mean, ambulance report through an annual review, and we report into... I can't remember what ROG stands for, but it's ambulance services wide reporting that goes up to ambulance governance committees, if you like.
Yeah. And I have no doubt that there's internal frameworks. I guess my question is more about what's publicly available.
No, I can certainly take that on notice.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it, Jen. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for coming along. In terms of separation from an employer, typically it's in circumstances where there's a termination of employment, where that person's, to use the colloquial term, or they're retrenched through some sort of restructure, or that they freely resign from an organisation. And in some instances with organisations, on that exit interview on the way out, under the circumstances, persons are asked to sign confidentiality agreements or non-disclosure agreements. Now, in terms of looking back in that 5-year period that's being undertaken, has any questions been asked or any information come forward that Westpac Rescue Service has a practice of requiring persons to complete a confidential agreement or non-disclosure agreement on their exit from the organisation?
So I can't comment on what has been included or reported into the review process, but from my awareness and our discussions with the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service about the review process, I understand that a number of staff did separate from the organisation, and there were a number of non-disclosure agreements in place, both at the request of the individuals and at the request of the service. And we have asked for assurance and been given assurance that the NDAs would be waived to the extent of enabling the people to take part in the independent review process without fear of breaching their NDAs.
And so there's essentially a nullifying or avoiding of the NDAs to enable that participation. Are you confident that there is that capacity to communicate to and provide an explanation to these ex-employees, irrespective of the circumstances of leaving, about their ability to sort of speak freely and openly about their past experience?
I think that's really difficult for me to comment on. All I can comment is that the independent reviewer was reaching out to these people directly, but beyond that, I have no knowledge.
Well, can I just, that's probably my last question, that isn't it potentially problematic that this review is taking place, and this is not reflecting on you personally, whereby you don't seem to have received an assurance, because it doesn't look like one's been sought, that the independent investigator is going to make this very clear, because if the individuals are contacted by an independent reviewer by phone and told, listen, we're conducting this investigation, would you like to participate? Unless there's some clear assurance to an ex-employee, that they may well be quite nervous about coming along and giving free and frank evidence or information to the investigator.
My understanding is that the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service reached out to the individuals to provide them with that assurance
But
prior to the investigator.
But with the greatest respect, would they not be the last organisation that some of these people may be wanting to hear from if they separated in different circumstances? I mean, they're hardly going to be confident about a phone call from Westpac Rescue Service saying, please feel free to come along and give evidence or information about concerns you may have had when you're an employee. Surely the independent investigator would have done that, surely.
Well, I think they've, to my knowledge, I think they've been reached out to by both the service and the independent investigator, and I can't speculate on how they would approach that.
Or could you take on notice consideration that if that is the modus operandi, in other words, they're being contacted by both the Westpac Rescue Service and the independent investigator, there seems to be a potential real problem with that if their separation was because of difficult or problematic or challenging circumstances around them being an employee of the Westpac Rescue Service. It seems to me to be an extraordinary situation that the Westpac Rescue Service is participating in this investigation in any way.
So that they're not participating in the investigation, but they needed to give an assurance regarding the NDA process to the individuals.
Okay.
We're out of time for this session. For questions on notice and any supplementary questions from the committee, the Secretariat will be in touch with you about those. Thank you again for making the time to give evidence today. It's much appreciated. The time to give evidence today, and I understand several of you have travelled from regional New South Wales as well to Sydney today. It's much appreciated. Could I start by asking each of you to state your name and position title and swear either the oath or the affirmation, and we might start from my left.
My name's Carl Bannum. I solemnly, sincerely, truly declare and affirm that the evidence that is now about to be given to me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
My name's Donna Stedman. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I'm Lauren Hutchins. I solemnly and sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Kim Hadson. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
My name is Robert Danelon. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Would you like to start by making a short opening statement today?
Yes, we would, and we'll all be making statements this morning. So thank you very much for hearing us this morning. My name's Lauren Hutchins. I'm an Assistant Secretary with the Health Services Union. I'm joined by our incredible delegates here today who will tell you a little bit about their experience at working across Bathurst, Orange and Bloomfield. I want to start by saying when you're a patient and you enter a hospital, your expectation is that every worker in that place is focused on delivering the best care for you, no matter their role, whether they be a physiotherapist, a cleaner, an admin worker. That is the expectation of the people of Bathurst and Orange when they enter those hospitals. The reality, though, is that there is an extra layer in the care that is delivered at those hospitals. At the moment, some of those services that are essential to delivering patient care are being managed by a multinational corporation who is driven by increasing their over $200 million per year profit. And what that means for workers on the ground, healthcare workers who turn up every day to deliver the best of care, those experiences put them at risk and it puts patients at risk. This morning we will table some survey results from our members who have been providing their feedback now for many years in relation to their concerns. But I'll take you to one particular statistic that is of great concern to us at the HSU. In our most recent survey, 67% of HSU members have not reported a workplace issue due to fear of management retaliation. So 2/3 of workers are too fearful to say if something is wrong at work. Now that puts them at risk. Absolutely, with failed equipment, with bad processes, with understaffing that we know is an issue there at these three hospitals. But importantly, it also puts patients at risk. When workers are too afraid to report incidents, we know that that is grave concern to us at the HSU. One of the things we'll be tabling which is of deep concern to us, and I will take you to it, and one of the reasons why staff no longer report incidents is this. A previous staff member was repeatedly threatened with rape by a patient, and the supervisor continued to place her in that ward, and she eventually quit. A worker who goes to their employer and says that I have serious concerns for my safety, let alone the safety of other patients, has been ignored. Now, she has left that organisation, she has left that hospital, but the patients, other vulnerable patients surrounded by this patient, didn't have the same choice. There are failures within this system that need to be addressed, absolutely. These are the concerns in terms of safety for workers and for patients, but I've just got to say, this arrangement doesn't make economic sense either. So we have a serious concern about the way that this contract is being managed, and one particular incident that we'd like to raise to the inquiry today is in relation to the security contract. And I will go to some of the notes in relation to this. So we believe there was a serious breach in terms of a conflict of interest that wasn't reported to the local health district by Downer Group. We were told, our members were told, that the security contracts or the security positions weren't able to be filled by workers direct to New South Wales Health employees, but rather that Downer would subcontract this work to a private company in the area. It just so happened that the private company, the private security contract company, was owned by the brother of the supervisor that was running the contract at Orange Hospital. So what we see here is work that is being siphoned off for profit from another profiting organisation at the expense of workers, direct workers, but importantly in terms of patient care. One of the real concerns was whether or not these workers, these subcontracted workers, would be required to undertake the same training as those direct employees, particularly around violence prevention management training. So what happens here is that our members report this to the local health district to say there is a serious conflict of interest in how this contract has been awarded. And what does the local health district do? It asks Downer to investigate it. So Downer investigates itself. Now, clearly, there is a real problem here in governance. There is no oversight in terms of how these contracts are being awarded, and there is a strong possibility that whilst we see this as a conflict of interest, Downer does not. I go back to the fundamental piece in all of this. When patients at Orange, Bathurst and Bloomfield walk through those doors, they expect the best quality care. What they don't expect is that there is a for-profit organisation delivering services in that hospital there. Now, this morning I am joined by our wonderful delegates here who will speak to their experiences. But these aren't isolated, and they speak on behalf of the members who have endured this for over a decade now. What we are seeking is change. What we are seeking is that the government does right by the people of Orange and Bathurst as they have done right to the people of the Northern Beaches. That those services that have now been taken out or have been taken out for years now for profit are brought back into New South Wales Health. Now, we understand that there are contracts in place, some very technical contracts in place that will need to be reviewed. And the first step is to unpick all of that and say whether or not the New South Wales government and therefore taxpayers are getting a good deal on this. But when you can subcontract out your work to your brother, seriously, there's got to be questions asked. Again, I will now hand over to our wonderful delegates to talk about their experiences and what it means to be a worker for New South Wales Health managed by a for-profit organisation that repeatedly tries to increase that margin. So I'm now going to hand over to Kim. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kim Hadson. I'm a BCom member and I'm the president of our sub-branch. Downer has been managing us now for 18 years, 5 months, and as of today, 12 days. We've never seen anybody do an audit to find out if things are beyond and above. The local health district and our management at Bathurst Health Service have never ever come down to see if things are running properly and we are okay. Our workers are pumped to the point of no return to do the discharges because that's where the money is. They micromanage, there's favouritism, there's nepotism. There's just too much, and I cannot understand after 18 years why our union, HSU, has never seen a copy of the contract that is with New South Wales Health. We are New South Wales Health people, but we're treated like outcasts, and we have been from day one because they don't think we're as important as what we once were. Things bypass us, things come into the hospital, and it's treated to the health, to the other areas of health, which is not cleaning, linen and security and wards persons. We're out there on a limb. We've been on a limb for the last 18 years. No one has listened to anything that we've brought up. We've had 2 strikes. The last one in 2017, we had a bit of an inquiry and then it slips back. We had a former Chief Executive Officer in Dubbo, Scott McLaughlin. He came down after our first strike. He apologised to us for the way we were treated and he was going to look into it. He then left, and now we have Mark Spittle, who has never once come to see us in our areas of work, even though he's been to Bathurst Health Service numerous of times. I want them to stand up and take responsibility because they are getting paid to manage us at that hospital. It is taxpayers' money and it's a hell of a lot of money that's being wasted from what I can see. I don't have all the facts, but it's waste and it could be going back into health for other areas of health that need it more. I don't want you to think this is a vendetta. I've been in the health system for a lot of years. I want what's fair is fair. I just don't want to see this waste of money. We have low staff morale. We've got people that don't come to work for the sake of coming to work. We've got atrocious sick leave. We haven't got enough staff. We've just been left out on a limb. Favouritism, unfair time frame for people to work. We're supposed to get an hour for the discharges. Sometimes we only get 20 minutes. So how are you supposed to properly clean a room in 20 minutes because there's more discharges? Come. And it starts from 6 o'clock in the morning and it goes right through to 5:59 the next morning. So it never stops. forever cleaning areas that people don't have things. I want to know that if an area is not cleaned, do they come back and log another job, and do they get more money for that? And I could be right off limits here. I just want the people of New South Wales, and especially this inquiry, to take note of what we're saying, because it's very important. It's your money. It's the people of New South Wales taxpayers' money, and they shouldn't be allowed to do what they do. I cannot believe we've gone 18 years without an audit. We are not even allowed to go to our own HR. We have to go to Downer's HR before we can go to our own, which we're New South Wales health employees. Why do we have to do that? So I would really, really feel that I would like something to come out of this that takes appropriate steps to put them in view of what they are doing for us. I thank you very much for your time.
Good morning. My name is Donna Stedman, and I've worked for Health New South Wales for 7.5 years. I'm currently a hospital assistant grade 3 at Bloomfield Hospital in Orange, which is a mental health facility. I have held the role of mail and linen officer for 5 years. I appear today as a delegate for the HSU and as the elected sub-branch secretary at Bloomfield Hospital. Our members are fed up with the way we are being treated. We are essential workers who for too many years have experienced intimidation, bullying and constant micromanagement. I have personally witnessed many breaches of confidentiality with my direct supervisor in my time of employment with Health. I have also experienced and witnessed intimidation, bullying, micromanaging and shortcuts by Downer staff on a regular basis, one shortcut directly affecting the linen room I work from. A year ago to the day this week, I was the victim of a verbal attack which was orchestrated by my Downer supervisor, whom during the 2 verbal assaults I suffered that day, stood silently as she witnessed these attacks. I had no warning that there was an issue with a missing parcel, and my permission was not asked for before being put on loudspeaker with my attacker. I was completely blindsided by the first assault. I was belittled, yelled at, accused of stealing, had my job threatened, and was told I would be held fully accountable and was liable for the missing mail item. All while my supervisor listened silently. While trying to find this parcel, I encountered my attacker again in company with my supervisor and was yelled at and accused of stealing for a second time. Again, my supervisor remained silent. I emotionally shut down during the second attack and fled at the first safe opportunity. As physically trembling, was in shock, I felt embarrassed and humiliated, and I was scared for my job. On seeking some clarity from my supervisor later that day, I was left feeling extremely self-conscious and embarrassed by my overreaction to the situation. I felt stupid and confused and suffered a physical reaction for weeks after. No one from Downer has ever checked on my wellbeing. No apology from anyone involved has ever been made to me. I lodged a formal complaint against my attacker and my supervisor. Downer handled both these complaints, even though my attacker was a health employee. I received zero information about my complaint against my attacker until after that person had announced their retirement 3 months later. I was called into a meeting with my Downer manager and a HR representative and was told there was nothing they could do as the person had left, and I was given a letter of completion. The whole meeting took less than 5 minutes. The process regarding my formal complaint against my supervisor has been nothing short of disappointing and pathetic. There were breaches of confidentiality between my supervisor and manager, straight out lies to protect Downer from HR. Nothing was resolved. The facilitated meeting that was conducted by an untrained HR member was ridiculous, and a deliberate attempt to make me feel isolated and unsupported was successful. Unbelievably, my supervisor did the follow-up for that meeting herself. My attempts to resolve the discrepancies in the facts and what was written in her follow-up email were ignored by her and completely dismissed by HR. I hit dead ends and got nowhere. I was continually dismissed and treated like an inconvenience. 4 months later, while on leave, I received an email that was a letter of completion in regard to my complaint about my supervisor. I have taken this matter further with health, and although it has brought up many positive meetings and discussions on changes that need to be implemented within health, I feel nothing has been accomplished in regard to how I've been treated by Downer this past year. The culture of arse covering within Downer is scary. Thank you.
Morning, my name's Carl Banham. I appear today as the HSU delegate and president of the Orange sub-branch. I've worked for New South Wales Health for approximately 16 years as a plumber and now as a health security assistant. I'd like to thank the committee and all involved for the chance to come and speak to you today on my experiences in the health service. The current management of the maintenance has let things deteriorate in an appalling state. I don't know how they're passing their KPIs every year with 2 checks a year, and they seem to pass very, very flying colours this year. They've got the best results they've ever had. Generally, looking at the state of the vinyl in the ED department, it is absolutely disgusting. There is cracks, joints, scrapes. There must be mould growing in some of it. There must be infection control issues with that vinyl. It seems to pass every year without a drama. Now, no one can understand how it's done because it is absolutely disgusting until the time comes. Then all of a sudden it's very well polished and cleaned, but the rest of the year it's absolutely filthy dirty. Mould has been found on roof panels and walls, resulting in the closure of an area around the renal dialysis area very recently. I believe it is being undertaken to be fixed at the moment. This has got to be putting the staff and patients in this area in danger, as renal dialysis is a very, very critical area. They are immune suppressed anyway. How can we be letting this happen in a public health area? As the sub-branch president, I was involved in consultation around the process of the Downers' proposal to put security into the Orange and Bathurst-based hospitals. The members raised issues that there was no process of going out to the other local security companies or other areas to put this out to contract. All of a sudden it was put to one company and this company was brought in. In this process, the members also raised to my concerns that these gentlemen were working 12-hour shifts at the mine at Orange and then coming doing a 12-hour shift at the base. Multiple times I've had members come to me and say that these people were falling asleep in the office while attending to their duties as a security guard at the hospital. This is unsustainable and in their work practice, and we don't know how this was let happen. We're told by a senior manager at Downer that the proposed company was the only company that side of the Blue Mountains that had the staffing and ability to do that contract. HSU members have also raised concerns of the employees that actually work for health, also working for this said company, and taking days off to do certain jobs for this company and being rostered as our manager is the brother of this company. I also believe under the licensing he is the second signatory on the master licence for this company, giving our people from health time off, employing other people from the hospital like our casual labourers to come in and do overtime to cover these people's shifts. How is this allowed under our policies in New South Wales Health? You are not supposed to take your second job as a main job. How is this being allowed to happen? This is not right in the situation and is costing the government money. I believe we should have the chance to fix this. I hope we can work together to fix this. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Danelon. I'm employed as a New South Wales Health wards person at Bathurst Base Hospital. I appear today on behalf of HSU members as a delegate and as the elected sub-branch secretary. Our members work at Bathurst Hospital because we care about the people who live in our community and want to make it a healthier and safer place. However, our line managers, who are managed by a private company called Downer, do not share the same ethos. Instead, Downer has spent years focusing on themselves. They are more worried about keeping their contract safe than they are about caring for improved worker-patient outcomes. Downer has presided over a culture of inaction, neglect and disrespect towards workers who are willing to speak out and address the serious cultural and safety issues at our hospital. I'm a living example of Downer's inaction. Twice in 3.5 year period, whilst moving an old ward bed, I felt pressure on my knee. On both occasions, within 5 minutes, I was unable to weight bear and then immediately proceeded to receive medical care. These 2 identical workplace injuries I sustained were due to manoeuvring 18-year-old poorly maintained ward beds. The lack of adequate maintenance and inability for Downer to decommission these faulty beds has caused them to move more like dodgy shopping trolleys and less like modern specialised beds designed to carry patients. After both incidents, I approached Downer management and followed standard protocols to get these beds replaced. Downer did not appear to listen to my concerns seriously. It was clear that they were not prioritising prevention of another WHS workplace injury or improving patient safety care. Instead of standing by and allowing their neglect to injure another worker, I spoke up with the support of my fellow HSU members to proceed further in actioning this WHS concern on their behalf. Unfortunately, we were not able to resolve our concerns by working collaboratively with Downer management. Instead, we decided to proceed on our own to ensure a safer workplace. After months of driving for inquiry and change, a risk assessment analysis on these beds in question was convened. With this table report I have here, Downer conceded and agreed to replace the 30 beds in question by the end of 2026. However, we remain concerned because we know from experience where Downer often promise positive outcomes they rarely deliver. I've provided a WHS risk assessment copy prepared in conjunction with my return to work manager to assist the committee as evidence. In my time as a delegate, Downer has never prioritised resolving WHS concerns in an appropriate time frame. There is a clear disconnect between their inability to address these concerns and the duty of care that they should provide under their contract to both the staff and public. The question has to be asked, why are taxpayers paying Downer to manage our hospital if they can't even replace faulty ward beds? What value does this contract give to our community? It does not make us safer. It does not make the hospital run smoothly. I have no confidence in Downer management. I love my job, but I do not love the working environment that Downer has created in the hospital itself. HSU members are fighting for dignity and respect, and we know that is a right, not an option. We want to be heard. We want to be treated like people who matter, and we want to hold Downer accountable for their inaction because our community deserves to have a hospital that is focused on keeping them healthy and safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, all of you. That's a really comprehensive overview of the issues with this contract. I'll start with some of my own questions before I go to my colleagues. To whoever is keen to answer this question, I'm keen to get my head around what the actual employment arrangement is here. This seems extraordinary that you've got New South Wales Health employees not managed by New South Wales Health. Can you clarify what that arrangement actually is?
Right. What my understanding is, when I started work, we were employed by Health and we are managed by a on-site manager and team from Downer. Now, I haven't understood it from day one. Everything we do from day to day, week to week, month to month is done by Downer and their organisation. We then come under Health as our employer for HR and payroll. It's never been a clear divide as to what we actually are done by, but if every time you mark up, all of a sudden you're under Downer HR and then you're sent to Health HR. It's a very, very grey line as to where we actually get to speak to. And as was said earlier, you've got to go to Downer's HR manager before you actually go to Health's HR manager. It's a very grey area.
Thank you. And in terms of the timeline of these issues, they obviously haven't just arisen in the couple of months that this committee's been doing this work. how far back did the HSU first raise concerns about, I suppose, any of these issues or these arrangements with the health district?
They took over on the 1st of December 2008, and by April 2009 we were in meetings about the way we were treated and things like that. So it has started very much from the beginning.
And what kind of response have you had from health?
None. We're like an island. We're triple P, that's how they look at us, and we've just been left to fend for ourselves, and we've just been continually, we bring things up, we sit down and have meetings, and like I said, there's been no frame of anything that's put into the system for us to follow by. So it's a very, very, as Carl said, a very grey area. And the problems have started very much from the beginning, from the day they took over. And you would think after 18 years that they would be running this company and at our work time like, boom, we should be flying along. But every time we get a new manager, new supervisors, new line managers, we have to start again. So it's just been continually.
Okay, so it's very clear from your answer that these are long-standing issues.
Very.
This particular New South Wales government is very proud of the work that it did to bring the Northern Beaches Hospital back into public hands, which of course I agree with. But have you seen any efforts to intervene? Has there been any examination or investigation or work with yourselves with this particular PPP?
Well, we've sat down and we talked to them. They're not unapproachable to talk to, but all they keep telling us, and it's like I said, not even the HSU has ever seen this contract that we're abided by. No one knows. All we're told is when we bring up the contract, there's a person in Dubbo, I think, that looks after this contract, and they just tell us that, everything's going fine. They're doing nothing wrong.
But your employment relationship is, just clarify that for us again, is it directly with New South Wales Health?
Yeah, they employ us.
We are payrolled by New South Wales Health,
but we're managed by
middle managed by Downer.
And we understand that part of this is that that facilities were developed some time ago, and part of the contract in terms of the development was ongoing management fees, if you like, and that's why there's this long-standing contract in place. But as we've seen with Northern Beaches, it doesn't matter if you've got a contract. If you've got the will to change, you can make the change happen, and that's what we're seeking. 18 years of having a for-profit organisation manage essential services in a public hospital is problematic in itself, but it's also inefficient. There's rorts in place. It should be examined. You can unpick this. If there's a contractual arrangement in relation to a developer, then deal with that. But don't ask New South Wales Health staff to be managed by a for-profit multinational company.
And what was the arrangement prior to the advent? When did you say it was instituted?
1st of December 2008.
And do any of you predate that
Yes.
transition? So you remember what it was like prior?
I do.
Do you want to just outline some of that experience for us?
We just, we had a lovely organisation that we were managed by a supervisor, like the cleaning, housekeeping things. We never did beds. We never ever did beds till this contract took over. We had our cleaning jobs and our linen jobs, our security jobs. No one worked afternoon shift bar security. No one worked night shift bar security, but now there's cleaners in everything of a night. So it was just a normal organisation, like if you walk into a public health hospital now. And our manager upstairs, our CEO, used to look after us. If we had any problems, we just took it straight upstairs.
And have New South Wales Health given you any information as to what they view as the relative efficiencies of this model as opposed to the previous system? Like, have all these kind of conversations been had? Because, I mean, the obvious question is, well, it's dysfunctional, you're wasting money. here's the figures, what's the point of it? Like, presumably those conversations have been had.
It's a great question.
Yes, they have.
I mean, our first ask is to review the contract itself and say, and ask exactly those questions about, is this fit for purpose? Was it ever fit for purpose is a question in itself, but we're here today, we've dealt with it. We think that those questions need to be asked by the government. You know, the local health district is acting, within its contractual arrangements. We need the will of government to change the contract.
So one potential thing coming out of this committee could be transparency around contractual arrangements, cost-benefit analysis, all that sort of thing?
Absolutely.
And as hospital staff, we're all concerned about that. We have asked the question about the transparency, but we're always stonewalled by Downer. And another thing that we're fighting for is consultation. You know, Downer itself, they come across as they're approachable, they're willing to consult, but I have to say, in the time I've been at the hospital, rarely have we been respected or valued in the consultation process. I was in the building industry for 20 plus years and I was always valued and respected. However, since I came across to the Bathurst Hospital as a New South Wales Health employee, I can honestly say I have never felt valued or respected on the workplace. So, in terms of consultation, there is none.
And can I just go over this brother relationship thing again? Can you just tease that out a bit for us again? Because I gather there's a bit of a conflict there, but I just want to
The base of that is the two brothers were working for New South Wales Health, and I believe that both brothers are still on the payroll for New South Wales Health at this stage. I have no further information on that, but that could be easily obtained. They started this company up while they were employed at New South Wales Health.
Right.
This was some 10 odd years ago. They were actually then subcontract to another company, and that's how they got their business to start. They were contracting to another security mob in town. They've now gone out, the brother's gone out on his own, and under the licensing contract, his brother is a secondary signatory on that licence at the stage, which can be looked up on the SLED website. And that's how the brother's now become our manager for security. And all of a sudden he's become the manager for security and they're getting the contracts.
Can I just ask? Sorry, just before I go to the opposition, I just wanted to note for the record that the member for Wallsend and the member for Orange have joined us in the public gallery. Sorry, and I'll go to the opposition for questions.
Just a quick question about security. Do you know how many people are on shift security at each time?
We have 4 on shift. There's one in ED, one on Bloomfield site, and 2 on the base site at all times. Mm-hmm. And Bathurst have 2 on shift each shift.
Okay.
Is that sufficient, do you think? Is it enough?
We need more on Bloomfield because Bloomfield being mental health. We've
Yeah.
actually had a nurse killed there some 11 odd years ago. Mm-hmm. We have been pushing for second guard all the stage. Unfortunately, we can't get it through New South Wales Health because under the protecting people policy, you're supposed to work by pairs, not by singulars. Mm. Unfortunately, there's not the budget there. We've been told there's no budget there for a second guard at Bloomfield. Mm. A second guard at Bloomfield at night and through the day when we get really bad patients coming in would be very, very handy. Extra safety for our other guards, patients and staff. Mm. I don't know how many times we've been assaulted in Bloomfield. The base guards come across to give you a hand to subdue patients under medical, what we're supposed to. We are still getting assaulted. Patients and staff are still getting assaulted because there is not the numbers of guards there in Orange.
And is 1 in ED sufficient?
One in ED is sometimes sufficient. Other nights, when we get really bad nights where we've got a lot of incoming patients, because Orange intakes from the whole area, Dubbo through to Wagga, we get a lot of patients in there. You might have 3 or 4 patients in that area. 2 might be very, very manic. So you're actually looking at 2 patients and you've got the base guards there with you all the time, so the base is actually not covered sometimes.
And sorry, the patient who was threatening to rape a staff member, was that a patient in Bloomfield?
Yes.
And was that patient then assessed, managed differently, or just the same treatment was continued?
I don't have that information. I do know that the co-worker was taken from the ward by the NUM back to the supervisor's office and said she is unsafe in my ward. So the NUM was aware. But like I said, the supervisor put her back in there in the first instance, claimed we were short-staffed.
Because I imagine that would be a safety concern for anybody working in that ward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one, sorry, to Miss Hadson? I apologise, this isn't my question, but just so, your substantive role at the hospital, I just missed what that was in your...
I'm a linen officer.
Okay, thank you, sorry. I wrote notes for everyone else and I missed that for you. I was interested when you said in your opening remarks about discharge and how quickly, and you said and where the money is, that's why you're sort of being, I guess, pressured to, not to sort of put words in your mouth, but that was what I got from what you said.
Yes.
Can you just talk to that a little bit more? Like, does it feel like the expectation is that you've got to churn through patients? Do you, and I appreciate it, you're not sort of clinically trained, but do you think that people are not getting the healthcare they deserve because it's all about money and numbers?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
They're just pump. You could have 5 discharges come in at once. They have 1 hour time frame. It could be someone sitting in a chair. It could be someone leaving after a couple of days. It could be a birthing room. And I mean, as we know, you need the time to clean that.
And that's what's not happening. There isn't allotted time for each hygienic clean, that's for want of a better phrase, of 45 minutes, depending if step 1, step 2, if you want to get technical. However, there's pressure put on those cleaners by Downer management to push it through quicker. Because, let's face it, the cleaning is their money maker.
And sometimes they're signed off before that hour so they don't get an abatement.
Yeah, okay.
And the stress on a lot of these cleaners
it's a big job. Like,
it's huge.
That's what concerns me the most. I've seen them under their pump, and it's an old union saying of ours, it's a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And some of these people are they're just getting pumped. And we've asked for graphs, we've asked for how, like, we're getting busier now. We've asked to look at things like that. It's only just come through. I think our organiser has a copy, but it only came through last week because we've asked for more discharge cleaners. There's only one on of a weekend, and, you know, that's a very busy time because we have lots of sports in Bathurst. And like I said, and in between, if there's no jobs of discharging, they've got to go and clean areas so they don't have to bring another cleaner in.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's good clarification. Thank you.
I think Mrs. Saval had a question online.
Thanks, Chair. Just had a question to Mr. Banham. I think you mentioned in your opening remarks that staff were working in, I think, 2 different companies, and gave the example of a 12-hour shift somewhere else before going to work at Health, and that this is causing additional overtime for New South Wales Health. Could you just expand a bit more on those concerns and how they could possibly be allowed under the secondary employment guidelines?
What's happening is the other company that the brother is a secondary signature on is actually contracting now to Orange City Council and a lot of other companies. And when they get big events on, they will pull in these staff to cover those events. And because these boys are licensed security guards at work, they work for this company as well. I don't have a problem with anyone having a second job. But they're taking time off when they're supposed to be on a shift at the hospital or at the base or wherever they're supposed to be working that day, being rostered off on that shift to work for the private company. Our overtime bill is then coming in because they're pulling in our casual staff to cover that shift, which has got to be costing money where that person should have been doing their shift instead of working the second job. And that's where the problem is. The other problem is, and I had it raised from members, the private company were covering out when we were actually short on staff. They were bringing in their guards, but their guards had done a 12-hour shift out at Cadia Mines, come to the hospital, absolute filthy dirty with all the mines gear on, the high vis, and falling asleep in the office because they've done a 12-hour shift already.
What about the fatigue management policy?
That was asked, all my members have asked, where was their fatigue management? They're doing 12 hours out at the mines and then being asked to step up and do another 12-hour shift at the hospital.
And they haven't furnished it?
Never been produced. We've asked for it, never been produced.
Do they say they have one?
They've just blindsided us, we'll get to it.
Thank you, Mr. Banham. It's very interesting. Just had a question for Mr. Danelon. I think you mentioned some concerns around consultation and that Downer are not listening to or acting on members' concerns. From your perspective, is that a view that is widely shared amongst other staff in New South Wales Health?
Yes, it is. Across a whole range of supporting services, the cleaners, the security guards, the nurses as well, which is a little bit outside our scope, but we work with them closely. Case in point, whenever we have a USSC meeting, which is basically chaired by Downer, and I'm going to put in a wardies meeting a monthly meeting with the wardies, whenever concerns are raised, in terms of the safety aspect, in terms of lack of staffing, etc. They always appear to be listening, but rarely has anything been actioned on the positive level. So, say for instance, as we've discussed before, with the cleaners, inadequate time frames, which we've discussed, allow for turning over rooms, and the discharge times has left it susceptible for unhygienic areas. Okay, we've raised these topics time and time again, and Downer appeared to listen, but they have not presented a case going forward as in, right, let's slow this down, let's allow a fair time frame for these cleaners to do their job in a safe manner, which puts at risk the public as well as the employees. So that's just one of the things that we can discuss as well. Just in reference to if I could just have a side note with the security situation at Bathurst Hospital, the inadequate numbers, we've only got 2 on at one time. Okay. A lot of the time when it's a fluid situation, so sometimes 2 of the security guards are tied up in ED just for one situation, and then occasionally there is a request for them to come to another one of the wards in which they're unavailable. So it sends, with a difficult patient that's got dementia, etc., the nurses are feeling vulnerable, scared. So they end up, it's called a code black. Security. So what they are forced to do is call a Met call, which basically calls a whole medical team to the incident because there is no security available. So by them calling a Met call, it forces the wardies to come across as well, which are treated as security, which shows that we need to look into the actual numbers of security staff in the hospital, because I think New South Wales policy is to have 1 security guard in ED permanently. However, we've been told that this will not happen at Bathurst Hospital until the renovations are completed. That's what I've been told. And that could be 2 years' time. We're not sure. Where there's no transparency, there's no resolution and time frame or anything like that. So I just want to give that clarification as to the level of inadequate security in the hospital at Bathurst, which is putting in danger the public as well as the employees. And it's putting unfair pressure on the wardies who are being treated as a de facto security, who are untrained. However, we've been told, we're all part of a team. Let's get there and do it. It's not like we don't want to do it, but we feel as though we're being put in danger unfairly, as well as our colleagues in the hospital. So I don't know if part of that's answered your question, but I just wanted to follow up with those points.
Can I ask you?
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Begg. We're actually well over time already.
Just 30 seconds?
There's three different members who've got
Sorry,
more questions,
okay,
so I
sorry,
think I'm going to
okay.
have to pull this up. But of course,
Yeah.
members are welcome to submit supplementary questions
right.
to the witnesses. Thank you again so much for taking the time to give evidence today and for those documents that you've tabled. We really appreciate the link that you've made between these contracts and the conditions faced by frontline staff and by extension the patients that you're there to serve. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for all your good
Thank
work.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
put in here today.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to our next witnesses representing Safe Work New South Wales. Could you please start with your name and position, title, and swearing either the oath or the affirmation?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Mary Snell, Safe Work Executive Director for Operations and Enforcement. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Kane Scott. I'm Director of Operations Regional North for Safe Work New South Wales. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Would you like to start by making a short opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
So, Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today before the inquiry into the Calvary Mater Hospital at Newcastle.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could I ask that you just bring that microphone a bit closer? Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. Safe Work New South Wales acknowledges the seriousness of the issues before the committee. Concerns relating to hospital infrastructure, mould, water ingress, electrical safety and psychosocial risks have direct implications for the health, safety and wellbeing of workers at the hospital, particularly in relation to those workers' efforts to provide clinical support and care to patients. As the state's primary work health and safety regulator, Safe Work New South Wales administers the Work Health and Safety Act 2011 and its associated regulations. We work to ensure that duty holders identify hazards, assess and control risks, consult with workers and take reasonably practicable steps to eliminate or minimise risks to health and safety. In relation to the matters identified at the Calvary Mater Hospital, Safe Work has been actively monitoring and responding to work health and safety concerns raised about conditions of the hospital. So our inspectors have undertaken multiple site visits responding to requests for service that relate to matters including the mould and water leaks, electrical hazards, drinking water contamination and the psychosocial risks. Safe Work inspectors have issued 5 improvement notices in response to identified non-compliances with work health and safety laws. Inspectors have also issued several Section 155 notices which compel the production of information and records to verify that compliance action has been taken. Earlier this year, Safe Work New South Wales received 2 psychosocial hazard requests for service relating to the hospital and its facilities maintenance arrangements. One of these matters remains under our active inquiry, so for that reason we'll need to be careful today not to comment in a way that could prejudice those inquiries or any future regulatory decision making. Throughout, Safe Work New South Wales has engaged with relevant duty holders and stakeholders. This includes most recently meeting with the parties on the 30th of April and with the Hunter New England Local Health District executives to clarify the scope of the building audit and to reinforce expectations about the timely management of risks and the required remediation actions. Safe Work has also attended the issue resolution meetings, which include the worker and union representatives, reflecting the importance of consultation in managing ongoing work health and safety issues. Safe Work New South Wales recognises that the matters before this inquiry involve a complex operating environment and multiple duty holders. While those arrangements may be complex, the duties under the work health and safety laws remain clear. Duty holders must ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, the health and safety of workers and others affected by the work. Safe Work New South Wales welcomes the committee's focus on these issues and will continue to assist the inquiry where appropriate. Our priority remains ensuring that relevant duty holders are meeting their legal obligations, that risks are being effectively controlled, and that workers, patients and visitors are not exposed to unacceptable risks to their health and safety. So thank you. I'm happy to assist the committee with its questions, noting that some of those matters do remain subject to active regulatory inquiry.
Thank you very much. I'll start with a couple of my own questions. One of the issues that has been very clearly raised with this committee is the complexity of the multiple private providers under the PPP for the Calvary Mater. How has Safe Work gone about establishing who is actually the PCBU for the various infrastructure issues at the hospital?
Thank you, Chair. So I would just start by saying there's many complex operating environments involving multiple PCBUs, so that is something that Safe Work is routinely, our inspectors are required to deal with. So when an inspector has attended in response to a request for service that we've received, that their inquiries are initiated by unpacking the roles and responsibilities of the various duty holders. In relation to the hospital, there's 6 PCBUs involved. So in the course of our engagement with the Calvary Mater, we have had cause to issue improvement notices to multiple PCBUs, to duty holders, so including Calvary, Medirest and Honeywell, in relation to how they share information, for example, and communicate information, or the systems of work in relation to how matters were logged through the QFM system, for example. So at any point in time, there's been an approach to multiple duty holders. Insofar as the complexity, it has been difficult at times to identify where the start and end of the role and responsibility of a particular PCBU starts and ends. In that context, though, inspectors will issue a Section 155 notice to compel the production of documents that we can then take away and consider to unpack that further.
Thank you. And so you've received, I think at the time of your written submission, you said 11 requests for service, and that there had been 4 notices provided. You're now saying there's 5 notices. Are you able to share where those requests for service have come from? Who's been bringing these issues to your attention?
Yes, Chair. So the predominance of the RFS, the requests for service, the RFSs that have been raised are worker initiated. We've had one initiated by a HSR and one initiated by a union. And they have been in relation to predominantly 3 duty holders, including Calvary and Honeywell and Medirest.
Thank you. Just before I go to my colleagues, we've just heard evidence this morning about a number of different issues at Bathurst and Orange hospitals, including particularly some issues around psychosocial risk. I appreciate you may need to take this on notice if you've prepared to only come and talk about Calvary Mater, but have requests for service been raised with you about those issues at Orange, Bathurst and Bloomfield hospitals?
I'm sorry, that's a matter I would need to take on notice to answer.
Thank you very much.
I just have a couple. Thank you for your submission and for appearing today. I wanted to go, the Chair just touched on it a little bit, but the 11 requests for service that you mentioned in your submission over the course of sort of the last 12 months or so, and I know that there are a couple that are still ongoing, but one of them you said you talked about drinking water contamination. That was something that was raised when we were in Newcastle as well, some concerns around that. Is there any more information you can provide to us about what was reported and what the issue was that needed to be remediated in relation to that contamination?
So in relation to that matter, I understood that it related to a water tank, and there was a concern about whether or not the water tank was connected to the town supply or otherwise.
Okay.
I'm advised by the relevant inspector that that tank was bypassed, so it is serviced by the town supply and it's due to be replaced.
Okay.
For any further update, I'm happy to take that on notice.
Yeah, no, that would be fine. I appreciate that there's a lot of detail in this. And on a similar vein, the mould and the water leaks, again, that's something that's been a substantive part of the issues that have been raised with the committee. I think you say there were 6 sort of requests for service in that space. Again, anything more around detail about that you can provide for us today?
I can, and I'm prepared to do that today. So in reflecting on SafeWorks' involvement with its regulatory oversight of issues at the Calvary Mater Hospital, we've reviewed there are requests for service that have been received over time. We first received a request for service about the mould on the 23rd of February 2015, where it was identified in relation to the hospital's records department. Though concerns at that time related to the cleaning process and concerns about exposure levels to mould. So a SafeWork inspector attended on the 27th of February 2015, observed the mould issue had been addressed, provided advice and guidance about appropriate communication with workers in relation to what testing had been undertaken and the potential risks associated with the exposure to mould. Based on our historical records at that point in time, there was no indication that the issue extended beyond that specific part of the area of the hospital. So that was then. Over the course of time, we've received 45 requests for service since the 23rd of February 2015. And of those, we've identified that 21 have related to conditions at the hospital. And of those, 10 relate to mould and water ingress. And after the 2015 matter I've referred to, there wasn't a further request until the 31st of August 2024.
Okay.
And then as is probably more broadly reflected in the evidence you've heard, as well as our own regulatory oversight, from March 2025, we saw an escalation in the number of requests for service about
mould. So
about mould.
it's sort of, to say grown, that's probably a bad choice of words, but in the last sort of 12 months to 2 years, there's been an increase in the concerns raised with you about mould in particular.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say the most recent one was the 2nd of March, and we've not received a request since then.
Okay.
That may well reflect, though, the work that has been undertaken to remediate and do the deep cleaning of the HVAC and the other measures that have been put in place.
Well, that was going to be my question. Are they my next question? So no, it's fine, and I'll let someone else have a go in a minute. But are they the mould issues that have been raised? Are they related largely to the HVAC? Is there a linkage there, or is it across a range of different issues at the hospital?
I might have to take that specifically on notice. I would say that the mould issues, because we escalated the conditions about the hospital issue by reaching out to the executive of the Hunter New England Local Health District in July last year. And following then, that was when we started to see the remediation plans put in place that now have the scheduled maintenance and cleaning, the HEPA filters in the high-risk areas of the hospital, the ability to bring in additional filters as any other areas of concern arise, and all of that's been monitored by interim controls that involve the air monitoring to identify whether or not there's any further issues.
Can I ask one more, Chair? Sorry. In your opening statement, you talked about the issuing, I think, of 5 improvement notices and then needing to compel information under, I think it was section 115. I may have written
155.
155. Only one number off. Is that fairly standard to do that in a health and hospital setting? Is that higher or lower than you would expect, or is it hard to compare?
So I couldn't answer whether or not it's higher or lower, but it's commonplace practice for inspectors when they attend to issue a section 155 notice to seek the production of information and records. It may not always be the case because some duty holders might volunteer that information, so we don't need to exercise the powers if we've received it. But and I guess it's also commonplace to verify when someone represents that compliance action has been taken, that we have records confirming that it did
And
occur.
with that section, does that request go to, in this instance, because of the PPP? Is it Hunter New England Health? Is it Honeywell? Where is that information sought to be obtained from?
We've issued section 155 notices to nearly all of the duty holders involved.
Okay. Could you provide maybe on notice how many to each, if you're able to?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Mrs. Suval on the video conference.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for appearing to give evidence. I just had a question regarding the performance improvement notices that have been issued. You mentioned, I think, 5 pins. Are you able to provide the committee with the details of those improvement notices and what they sort of, where they're sort of up to, I suppose? How many are resolved, how many are outstanding, what they were about?
Yes, I can. There's 5 improvement notices, and the first of those was issued to the Hunter New England Local Health District on the 27th of May 25. That notice, though, was cancelled by us in the need to identify the correct duty holder. We had then engaged with the Hunter New England Local Health District, who had committed to us in July last year to the planning of the remediation work, so we didn't issue a further improvement notice. We issued 4 other improvement notices on the 3rd of February this year. The first was to Calvary Healthcare. This related to the provision of information to workers. Probably from January there had been further concerns raised about the receipt of information about what were the remediation measures being undertaken at the hospital and how it was being communicated to workers that there were adequate controls in place. That has been complied with. There was a further notice issued to Honeywell. It had 2 aspects. One was in relation to the provision of information, and one was in relation to a specific electrical hazard. The electrical hazard identified was rectified. That notice was challenged, though, on the basis that there'd not been a breach because it had been rectified. There was also an issue in relation to Honeywell had the obligation to fix the hazard, but they didn't hold the obligation to identify and log the hazard in the system. That was the MediRest system. The next notice was also to Honeywell, sorry about the information. The final notice was to Medirest, which is the Compass Group. That related to concerns raised about the ability to get a reference number from the QFM system when you rang the help desk. So the outcome is that notice has been complied and now workers receive a reference number as well as notification of the outcome of the matter they raised.
Thank you. If I can go back to the issue regarding the electrical hazard, are you able to give us a bit more detail about what that involved and whether there's any implication around the sort of complexity regarding what, for want of a better word, a dispute about who may or may not be responsible, whether that has any implications?
Yes, I can take that one on notice, I think would be the way to provide a most comprehensive answer.
Thank you. In terms of I think you mentioned 6 PCBUs that was involved. Who are the 6 PCBUs?
There would be the Health Administration Corporation, Hunter New England Local Health District, Calvary Healthcare, Novacare, Medirest and Honeywell.
And how has SafeWork ascertained which PCBU is responsible for what?
So that's involved a process of making inquiries directly with the duty holders and, where necessary, issuing the Section 155 notices to obtain a copy of the various documents that reflect the contractual arrangements. And as we've experienced, and this is not uncommon, when issuing improvement notices, some of those duty holders have then pointed to a particular aspect of that notice may not be within the remit of their work health and safety obligation, but within the remit of another duty holder.
And has there been any delays in terms of issuing the notices or any adherence with complying with the orders due to that level of, I suppose, complexity around who may or may not be responsible, where the lines are? Has there been any delays or barriers, you'd say?
No. And in relation to the one that was issued to Honeywell for the electrical hazard, that hazard had been rectified before the notice was challenged.
That's all I have for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Cotter?
Ms Snell, if I could just follow on from the question from my colleague Ms Saval. I think you indicated there's 6 PCBUs that you're dealing with when you're talking about Calvary. Just wondering, in your experience of resolving issues, is there much difference between dealing with the issues raised at Calvary and dealing with issues that might be raised at, say, Westmead Hospital?
I defer to you.
Yeah, I would say no. Again, as we indicated earlier, inspectors are very familiar with working with very complex organisational structures, and so navigating their way through that is fairly common practice.
Great, thank you. And I'm interested in the work that you said had been done in relation to requests for service for mould and looking at HVAC systems, also reflecting on the situation at RPA with the Aspergillus outbreak and the fatal consequences that had. Is part of your work looking at changing requirements or changing standards going forward so that these issues don't recur, so that we have increasingly safe workplaces going forward?
Well, if I could answer a couple of ways. So the first thing I just note is that we don't have oversight in setting the clinical governance and the clinical practice standards for hospitals or addressing those particular issues.
If I could, I wasn't asking a clinical governance question. Issues about cleanliness of HVAC systems or maintenance of HVAC systems and mould. The same issues raised with respect to RPA and Aspergillus. So I suppose the question is, what are we learning from this
Yes.
so that these things are not repeated?
I appreciate the question. Thank you for the clarification. So I think it's fair to say that we have the opportunity to take away some observations in relation to how this might apply more broadly to the system of the hospital sector. And yes, we can look and consider what compliance looks like there.
And have any recommendations or any change to standards or protocols in relation to maintenance of HVAC systems been made to date?
Not specifically, no.
Is this an area of current work?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm happy to take that on notice to confirm, though.
Thank you. That would be great. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Ms Boyd?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to our witnesses. I just wanted to touch on this. When we've got 6 PCBUs involved in an incident, is there I'm just reflecting back on the hearing that we had on the 13th of March. Is it that long ago? 13th of March. Where it seemed like there was quite a lot of buck passing. Is there any sort of work being done at Safe Work level to work out a policy of how we, designate someone to be the most responsible, or is there something that we can be doing in these very complicated PPPs to try and actually, sort of reinforce our safe work policies in a more effective way?
Thanks, Ms Boyd. I guess how I'd respond to that is that yes, and I would say we have undertaken work in that regard. So when issues began to escalate, we as an executive went to the Hunter New England Local Health District Executive to have an escalated regulatory compliance meeting about, well, we look to you to step in and clarify how are these matters going to be addressed. And Health did acknowledge the issues and undertake to commit to the remediation work, which we understand is the construction's imminently due to commence.
But you had to get to that point, I guess, of having that meeting.
That would be our escalated approach to compliance.
Right, in order for someone to take that level of responsibility. Would it be easier for you if we didn't have this sort of many, cooks in the kitchen?
I think what I'd say is that it ultimately comes down to the conduct of the duty holders, whether or not we need to take escalated compliance. And as Mr Scott's referred to, there's a number of workplaces where arrangements are complex, there's multiple duty holders. So oftentimes we will escalate and meet with directors of entities to put on the table squarely what approach are you going to be taking. We would rather secure the safety outcome and achieve the compliance. That's a better outcome than watch improvement notices play out in court proceedings. So that's been our approach, to seek to escalate and get the PCBUs to engage in the right way to achieve the outcome that's needed.
I guess I'll be honest with you. I think where I'm coming from here is that it does strike me that these very complicated ownership and operation structures, where there's multiple PCBUs and this buck passing that then goes on, is making these hospitals less safe than they might otherwise be. If I just put that directly to you, what is your experience dealing with something under a complex PPP versus something that's a far more straightforward operating structure?
I think our approach is the same.
It's not a harder job for you when there's multiple.
It may involve additional work insofar as needing to interrogate responses from duty holders and follow where the information or the records might lead to the next duty holder. But our approach will be the same. We will undertake our job and do it.
Of course, but your job might be easier if there was a more straightforward.
I think it's kind of speculative. I referred to Ms Snell's comment that it would depend on the attitude and commitment of the duty holder duty holders more than the number of duty holders. And so it can be an advantage to have multiple duty holders who are specialising in a particular area of risk management within a business. And so it's not necessarily harder, it's not necessarily better one way or another. It's the skill of the inspector to navigate through that. And while there might be 6 PCBs involved, they might not all be equally involved in a particular incident or risk. So the inspector would work with the most appropriate duty holders. And again, it's not so much the number, it's the attitude and commitment of those PCBUs to achieve compliance.
And do you think the employees working in these workplaces understand sort of how to, I guess, which PCBU is responsible for which thing? Do you think it makes it harder for them to know who to report these things to?
I guess I'd say to that, insofar as our role as a regulator, for all of them, they can call 131050 and lodge a request for service. That's the clarity I would give to that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to come back to the questions around mould and the HVAC. It's my understanding from New South Wales Health that their audit process for the HVAC may take all the way until the end of the year. There's obviously significant distress and concern from staff and patients around the safety of the wards, noting that a couple of them have had to be closed. What would you expect in terms of routine testing or communication of testing to be assured that those workplaces or those patient care areas are safe while that audit process plays out?
Okay. To that, I'd say that the controls are already in place and have been for a couple of months now. So our inspectors will continue to have regulatory oversight. They'll support the construction piece. They're attending the issues resolution meetings. So we will continue to have regulatory oversight, particularly from those air monitoring tests that they are obtaining, that those controls are remaining effective.
Okay, thank you. And could you just articulate specifically, so the controls that are in place that you're satisfied with, what those are?
I can take that on notice to give you the most comprehensive answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions from my colleagues, that brings us to the end of the session. There were a few questions taken on notice, so the Secretariat will be in touch with you about those and any supplementary questions that might arise. Thank you very much again for your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to our next witnesses representing New South Wales Health, and welcome back for Ms. Kilander and Ms. McCosker. Thank you for making the time again to provide evidence, and welcome to those online from the Western Local Health District. Could we please start by stating your name and position title and swearing either the oath or the affirmation? We might start in the room.
Thank you. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and should confirm I'm Emma Skierlander, the Deputy Secretary of Infrastructure and Asset Management at New South Wales Health, and also the Chief Executive of Health Infrastructure.
Thank you.
Tracy McCosker, Chief Executive, Hunter New England Local Health District. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. And I'll go to our witnesses online.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mark Spittle. I'm the Chief Executive of the Western New South Wales Local Health District. I solemnly do declare that the evidence I'm about to give shall be the truth and nothing but the truth. I apologise, I don't have the oath in front of me to read it back.
I'm just getting a copy so we can do a repeat after me.
I do apologise.
No.
Sorry, was that the oath or the affirmation?
The oath.
Oath. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me
I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me
shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. We'll go to our next witnesses.
Thanks, Chair. Peter Boddington, Executive Director of Finance and Corporate for the Western New South Wales Local Health District. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Daniel Robinson. I'm the Manager of Contracts and Procurement for Western New South Wales Local Health District. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. I'll start with some of my own questions before I go to my colleagues. My first question's to Western New South Wales. We've just heard evidence this morning about the contract with Downer at Orange, Bathurst and Bloomfield hospitals. Why is that contract not publicly available under the GIPA Act?
Madam Chair, in fact, it is available. It's on the New South Wales Government website, and we could provide, in a written response, the web address for that.
Thank you. I'd be delighted to have a copy, and I've neglected to provide you the opportunity to make an opening statement. I apologise. Our witnesses in the room had already appeared. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Madam Chair, I wonder if it would assist the committee if I was to ask Peter, our Executive Director for Finance and Corporate, just to briefly outline the nature of the Triple P so that everybody is clear about how the structure works under this particular Triple P, because every Triple P is different.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. Really briefly for the committee, this Triple P has been in existence for circa 2007. It runs until 2035, December. It's for non-clinical services. So as you would have heard from previous attendees, the likes of cleaning, wards persons, portering, security and the like. The Triple P is an arrangement with a project company, Pinnacle Healthcare, who then obviously have a subsidiary agreement with Downer Group to provide a range of services. The origin of the Triple P came about initially by the construction of what was at the time the New Orange Health Service. And as Mark alluded to, each Triple P has some slightly different tangents. Ours had a tangent around the financing of that facility at the time as well.
And Madam Chair, just to extend on that, so the Triple P then subsequently got extended to Bathurst, where there is a Downer undertake facility management on behalf of the Triple P. They're not part of the Triple P themselves. As Peter said, they're contracted by Pinnacle to it. part of the Triple P is a labour services agreement which Downer effectively undertake the line management of New South Wales health staff within particular areas that are relevant to the Triple P. Typically what we would call orderly, linen, domestic, security type services.
Thank you, that's helpful. We heard evidence this morning around mould that had been discovered around the dialysis area at Orange Hospital, which was pretty concerning. What arrangements were made to be able to continue providing that service safely to patients?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when that was discovered, we have a process of engaging hygienists to take a look at the issue of as needed quarantining areas from clinical service. This was a leak within a wall cavity that was discovered. Areas were taken offline, and there's quite a formal process around that, while it was both from a work health and safety point of view, but also from a service provision point of view, remediated, and that would be normal practice in our organisation, regardless of whether or not there was a Triple P in operation at the particular site.
And what investigations were made to establish the extent of that mould and that it wasn't impacting other parts of the hospital?
So from time to time, there are maintenance issues in various parts of the hospital that will arise, and indeed there were some other water ingress issues as we provided information to the Parliament in terms of the request for documentation some time ago under a standing order. As I said, the LHD ensures that appropriate hygienists, people with expertise in the area of mould, brought in as part of the early stages of the process to identify the extent of the ingress or the mould issue, and again that standard process. We could provide or take on notice a more detailed explanation than that if the committee wishes, but in general, the committee could be assured that there was a sound and normal process that you would expect in an industry addressing this kind of issue in a hospital context.
Okay. If I could just come to a different risk, being psychosocial risk. I mean, we've been presented with extremely concerning survey results from union representatives that 2/3 of the staff haven't reported a workplace issue due to fear of management retaliation. That's obviously extremely concerning. What have you done in response to that?
Well, as yet we haven't been presented formally with the results of the HSU workplace survey. We have met with the HSU around some concerns with the nature of the relationship between employees and the Triple P facility manager. We did that in conjunction with officials in the ministry and so on, and the outcome of that was to ensure that we had the workplace union staff consultative committees meeting regularly and up and running, and we as an LHD undertook to make sure that that occurred. That's a formal process with the delegates, so those employees in the workplace who have a higher level of power, for want of a better word, through the union movement to be able to represent issues arising in the workplace. And those committees are in place. There were some specific individual related issues that were raised, have been raised over the previous 12 months, both in relation to our own employees as an LHD, as well as in relation to some of the interrelationships with Downer management. And they've been worked through by our HR partners who support this contract in detail over the past 12 months.
This allegation that the security contract was subcontracted without a tender to a company that was owned by the brother of the supervisor was extremely concerning. If this were a New South Wales Health managed facility, have you got policies or guidelines in place that would prevent that kind of tendering?
We certainly do, and in fact, in this situation, we ensured through the Triple P partner that it was investigated in exactly the same way that we would investigate it. And if it had been in an LHD-run facility, we would have brought in our independent internal audit team to undertake an investigation and provide independent findings on that result of those investigations. And in fact, I think Mr. Daniel Robertson, who's on this call, could provide you more detail about that, because as our contract manager, he was intimately involved in ensuring that that occurred. I put it in context also, which may be helpful for the committee. This was a agreement that was entered into in 2022 initially, when all parts of rural and regional New South Wales were scrabbling to find staff in the wake of the pandemic. We had a number of shortages in security staff across the district, and that was entered into and then tailed off. And I think in the last 12 months it no longer exists. It's been concluded, but it was, something like about $2,500 was spent in this kind of outsourced arrangement in the year prior to its conclusion. In the initial year, 2022, a much higher sum was spent. But I wonder, Madam Chair, if the question could be, or perhaps if Daniel could be given an opportunity to talk through the process that he went through at the time.
Please.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chair. The moment that the LHD was advised of the potential conflict of interest, that came to me via the HSU representative, Thomas Robinson. He contacted me on the 25th of September and we spoke just over the phone, and he flagged that concern. I immediately raised my concerns with what's been raised. I put that in writing and put dot points to our local downer management, as would be the appropriate process, as Mark has said. Locally first, we gave them an opportunity to identify whether they believed it was a conflict of interest and what they had done to manage it if it were the case, what safeguards they'd put in place, and to provide us a response in a short period of time. Part of that was also to flag my personal concerns about the seriousness of that issue. As with any government organisation and organisation contract, as you guys, as the committee are surely aware, conflicts of interest occur all the time. It's simply just about about identifying that, declaring those, and managing them appropriately. The initial response we received back from the local management team, to my opinion, was not satisfactory, and I did not believe that it was being treated with the level of seriousness for which I believed to be the case, and as Mark has said, in a way that we would like, and it would have been managed had it been raised within our LHD. The great thing about this particular Triple P is we've got excellent communication channels available, so I was able to connect straight in with our colleagues within the project code, because ultimately their contract is the contract that connects with Downer, and they were able to escalate that to a far more senior level of Downer Australia, and they commenced they passed that on to their internal ethics and audit team to undertake an independent investigation. Now, that internal audit ethics and audit team report directly to their board, and that is a very similar circumstance to our internal auditor, who reports to our board.
So you satisfied that that process was independent, with Downer investigating itself?
I wouldn't categorise it as Downer investigating itself, but yes, I was satisfied with the outcome of the investigation. And as I said, the investigation was undertaken in a very similar way to the way that LHD would have undertaken such an investigation. So if our internal auditors were conducting a review of something that, say, myself or my team had undertaken. By that theory, you would be saying that Western New South Wales investigated itself when really there's an independent audit team who's specifically directed by the board, well and truly above local or senior management.
Thank you. I've got loads more questions, but I'm wary of my colleagues also wanting to ask questions. I'll go to Mrs. Mitchell.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to move to Hunter New England Health and Ms. Gillander, if I can, please. I wanted to go to the issue of some of the air sampling results at the hospital, particularly in Ward 5D. Some of those documents came back through our call for papers, and I'm happy for either or both to answer depending on who's best placed. Those results show that as far back as April 2025, there were abnormal results, I think ranging from 5 to 13 times higher. I guess what are the sort of safe levels, and then that escalated to up to 54 times higher in December. I'm just wondering why action wasn't taken to close that particular ward earlier, given the result of that air sampling.
I might, if it's okay, ask Tracy to respond to that one.
At that time, there was an independent clinical review commenced in April 2025 when those results were identified. Mm-hmm. It involved clinicians and external infectious disease experts in line with New South Wales health policy. That review went also back to 2019, mm-hmm. and it found that there was no evidence of clusters or outbreaks and no increased risk of invasive aspergillosis. So even though those results were identified, it was clear, it was investigated and felt that there was no need to close that ward. At other times, as you know, we closed 5D when we did believe it, and I'm not an expert in that space, so I can give you I can take on notice some extra information. But when we do believe we need to close a ward, we close it, but it wasn't necessary. There was 3 patients that met the predefined criteria for an in-depth review. It was found that none died from invasive aspergillosis, none met the definition of a hospital-acquired invasive aspergillus infection, and the aspergillus, as you know, you've probably heard a number of times, is common in the environment, so detection doesn't necessarily indicate infection or harm. And at the time, we had clinical experts come in and all the mitigating factors that were put in place, with that decision, they said that they didn't need to close it.
Yeah, I mean,
I think...
sorry,
Ms. Mitchell. Just the other point, I think, is closing hospital wards is very disruptive, as you can imagine, and so decisions can't be taken lightly, and risk assessments are undertaken with input from specialist clinicians. And as Tracy's just mentioned, the infectious diseases experts were part of the decision making around this. I think, as you've seen through the documentation submitted more broadly in relation to mould issues in hospitals, they do crop up. We do receive, reports of mould, but we action them and make sure that we've risk assessed those, and make sure that there's a plan to sort of either fully mitigate or to do works in order to mitigate. And so it's the sort of knee-jerk reaction to immediately close something isn't necessarily the right outcome for the patients either. And so a committee of people will be involved in that decision making.
Yeah. Look, I appreciate what you're saying, but I guess from an outside perspective, when it looks as if there was evidence in April that you've got rates of 5 to 13 times above what the recommended level should be, and then it then escalates to 5 to 54 6 months later, questions will be asked about why there weren't decisions made earlier. But you're confident in the clinical decisions that were made in April is your evidence?
Yes, I am confident, and a lot of work was done to make sure there's no choices to make, the hard choices to, the easier choice would just be to close everything, but that's difficult. And so we had to really look into it, and very confident that the right decision.
And difficult in the sense of overall impact to patient care, because obviously caring for the patients is the priority. Therefore, closing something has an impact on patient care, and balancing that in some of these.
And clinicians are involved in this decision, not executives.
Yeah, so and I guess the decision, and if you need to take this on notice, I appreciate that, but once it escalated to that point in December, that was the trigger for closure. Was that the threshold that clinicians felt was necessary to then make that decision to close?
My understanding is that the results were received in April and then control measures were implemented at that time. And then there was some improvement during the year and therefore it was looking like it was tracking in the right direction. And then the results received in December were the ones that created some concern.
Okay, could you maybe provide on notice any of the clinical measures that were put in place and any data that was tracked between April and December, if that's possible?
Yes.
Thank you. I also just wanted to go to the broader issue of the HVAC system in general, obviously at Calvary. One of the concerns, I guess, is that the documents we've got from Honeywell show that there isn't humidity control within that system and therefore, I guess, the inference is that the mould will continue to be an issue. So it has to be fixed for the mould problem to be resolved. Would that be a correct assumption?
I haven't seen actually the detail of the documentation from Honeywell or had, I guess, reviewed it from an engineering perspective, but I can just give you a sort of high-level response to that and you can consider if you need more.
Yeah.
I think that as Honeywell's provided evidence that there are clearly some issues with the HVAC system, it's very difficult to determine based on the information that we have been provided by Honeywell, also putting aside that some additional information may be in the documents provided to the inquiry. I'm not sure what the gap is between what we have and what went to the inquiry. What we needed to do to be confident in what the next steps are is our own building services investigations, and so a full review of the HVAC system is what we've previously referred to. That review is progressing well. We're anticipating that early June we'll have the results from that review to be able to inform what is required. So Honeywell may have claimed that it requires replacement or something without validating that through this process. I don't know the exact next steps, but I know I will know the exact next steps, and then we can make some very sensible, informed decisions about what work needs to be done.
Okay, so that could potentially include replacing or upgrading the HVAC system at the hospital?
Yes.
And is that something that the government would look to do?
Look, under the contract arrangements, it is the responsibility of Novacare to do. We've heard in the past in these hearings the disputes between Novacare and Honeywell and who's responsible for what. I think what we're anticipating is there may be a need for government to step in, as we have with other works, to make sure that we get the right outcomes because our priority is patient safety.
And I appreciate that you're doing the work at the moment, but is there any indication as to what that would cost to do the level of replacement or upgrade that you would need?
Not at this stage. I mean, I would be a wild guess because it may be that the system's in there. There's a whole hospital. Some of it is very old buildings and some of it's slightly newer under the Novacare construction works. It may be that some of the HVAC systems can be rectified, use existing systems and upgrade, or it may be that we have to entirely replace systems. An entire replacement of systems is a much greater cost, obviously, than upgrading an existing, but without the information from those reports, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, and I suppose, I guess the reason for my questioning is we know that the presence of aspergillus, and notwithstanding what you've said, Ms McCosker, about where it may be coming from, but obviously there's data that it significantly increases the risk to people who are immunocompromised or ill already if the mould is being continuously there because of inefficiencies in the HVAC. Is that the sort of thing you'll look at in terms of giving advice to the Minister and government around risk to patients from this being a continuing mould issue and needing to address the infrastructure challenge?
We've previously noted the sort of step-in actions that we've taken to enable progress in this regard. Our priority has been immediate patient safety, and we've been working very closely with Calvary in relation to that. There's a group set up that looks at sort of day-to-day decision-making around some of this that Tracy's team participates in and the Clinical Excellence Commission participates in. So if, for example, something comes up that we think may be of risk, that group of people reviews it and considers whether any different decisions need to be made on the ground. We can be responsive to that. So the example of the ward closure is one example there.
Yeah.
In parallel, though, we're looking at what the longer term fix is. What we've done is make sure that things are safe in the short term and given ourselves a level of confidence that the decisions being made on the ground have sort of bought a little bit more time to be able to work through what that longer term solution is, including the HVAC upgrades.
Okay. If I just have one more, if I can, Chair, just to Ms McCosker, when we had the hearing in Newcastle, which was a couple of months ago now, we were talking about you gave some evidence in relation to abatements and particularly for Novacare, and I think you said that the plan was to sort of hold off in good faith to see whether there could be a resolution going forward. Given that it's really the main sort of tool that you have to enforce compliance in the PPP. I'm just wondering if, since we had you before the inquiry in March, whether there's been any change in that approach to abatements against these companies, and if any have been issued or progressed since we last spoke with you.
There's certainly been a number of breach notices issued. We haven't changed the policy around abatements for a number of reasons. Some of that was about the financial viability and some of the implications that might happen after that, but the breach notices have been issued. Quite a number of breach notices have continued.
Can you just explain what you mean by the financial viability? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I might just sort of talk to that. So
Sure.
in looking at, the Minister's previously commented that we're looking at all available options in relation to the PPP. I think we've previously stated that we're dissatisfied with how it's operating at the moment. The breach notices to Novacare are continuing to utilise the contractual mechanisms available to us to be able to sort of push for the resolution that we require through the contract. But increasingly, we're seeing that it's not resolving the issues. And so the abatements point that Tracy makes, I think I made the same point at the previous inquiry around trying to actually work with Novacare and subcontractors to come out the other side of this and find a sort of viable solution so as not to abate more than Novacare is liable for month by month, because then them going into it, that would sort of trigger them going into voluntary administration or administration, and therefore trying to find a way to work through that. I think safe to say the options that we're considering are contemplating these commercial implications of decisions that we make and making sure that we're coming out with a preferred commercial option that can get us as a state out the other side reasonably. The priority in all of that, I will state, is continued patient care.
But not much has really shifted since we spoke to you a couple of months ago. Is that a fair
So,
assessment?
lots of things have been done, decisions have been made, we've taken further action on the ground, but there's a number of inputs. I think I previously articulated the complexity in terms of legal and commercial inputs that we need to make those final decisions regarding next steps. And so one of the inputs that I'd stated previously was these building investigations, because making decisions without understanding the level to which the state then could potentially become responsible for some of these costs is very important in making the decisions. So the time frame of sort of a resolution is a little bit difficult to put a finger on, but I think that the progress has been made and decisions have been made along the way.
Okay, I'll let someone else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Mrs. Sivell.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for providing evidence so far. My first question is to Mr. Spittle. In terms of the publicly available PPP contract that you mentioned, I noticed the one online is a revised edition from 2010. Is that the one that you're referring to?
I believe so.
Could the committee please get a copy of the contract as it was in 2007? There is a link to that document that is embedded within the contract as of February 2010, but unfortunately that link no longer appears to work. So it would be useful for the committee to have the original contract as of 2007.
Sorry, Mrs. Sivell, can I just jump in? I have a very similar question. It would make sense to put back to back. I was also going to ask, it was previously taken on notice to provide us with a copy of the contract, but not specifically which one. And my understanding is that sterilising went across to Downer 3 years ago, but the publicly available summary of contracts is from 2010. So in addition to Mrs. Sivell's request for the original 2007, could we request the one that is current now?
Certainly we will take that on notice. In terms of what's available and the links and so on that you've referred to, can I just clarify for the Chair that sterilising was actually taken back by the LHD 3 years ago. It didn't go across to Downer. It came back out from under this contract. And at a point in time, there's also been a variation that has brought biomedical services back to us.
Yeah, thank you. So confirming there were changes to that contract between 2010 and now. Yeah, thank you. My apologies. Back to you, Mrs. Sivell.
No, that's very pertinent. You mentioned also, Mr. Spittle, that there were some tangential links, I think, in your earlier remarks to the existing Orange Health Service. And then I think it was revised and extended out further to Bathurst in terms of the PPP. What were those links, whether they were finance or otherwise?
So this predates me, but to the best of my knowledge, the variation in 2010 would have been the variation that brought Bathurst in under this agreement. The original agreement was for the construction of Orange Health Service, and then it subsequently got extended to include the labour services agreements around Bathurst and the facility maintenance components of Bathurst. That's the fundamental change between, I'm pretty sure, between 2007 and 2010.
Thank you. In terms of some of our earlier witnesses, one of the HSU members mentioned they'd experienced multiple workplace injuries due to faulty equipment. It was beds that were really old. They raised it to Downer Group. They were unable to resolve these issues. I'm interested in whether Western New South Wales LHD considers themselves to be the PCBU for these workers?
So there are work health and safety obligations for both Downer and the Triple P, and for the LHD here. So we don't consider ourselves to have contracted out of work health and safety responsibility here, and in fact the deed, the labour services agreement component of the deed makes that clear. It is the obligation of Downer to ensure that staff have access to the equipment that they need, and indeed in terms of the beds, there is an active bed replacement program going on, which the latest advice I have is that by the end of 2026 we're anticipating all of the bed stock at Bathurst to have been refreshed.
Thank you. In terms of you as the PCBU, if an issue is raised, what process or oversight does the LHD have on the process that Downer Group follows?
So it's similar for any other part of the LHD, our risk management unit, which is the unit within the LHD that addresses work health and safety issues and deals with safe work and so on, has a role in oversighting here, and they typically would, depending on the issue, they might well be involved in some kind of workplace internal inspection alongside Downer as well.
And so what steps do you take when an employee reports a safety concern to Downer Group?
So it would be not dissimilar to any other part of our LHD. There are processes within Downer for issues to be raised. If they are reported to us and if they are significant and take some resolving, then we would expect that to occur. Then, as I said, our risk management unit would apply the same process that it applies to any other part of the LHD where a work health safety concern is raised. That extends also to proactive audits in the workplace around workplace health and safety issues.
It somewhat preempts my next question in terms of what regulatory controls that you have in place to ensure that the LHD is ensuring those workers that are sort of managed by Downer Group but employed by the LHDs are safe at work?
So we have a range of issues, and as I'm stating quite clearly, they're fundamentally no different than for anywhere else in the LHD. We undertake regular accreditation audits, which include workplace health and safety issues, include facility inspections. They're undertaken by external agencies. We have our own workplace health and safety audits. There are union staff consultative committees that exist through which things can be raised. It is certainly true that in part of last year that had ceased meeting. I think at Bathurst, and I spoke earlier about how we had that issue had been raised with us, and we had, as an LHD, have made sure that those meetings are back up and running and chair them ourselves. And then there are direct links between, depending on the site, they're slightly different between the local hospital executive and members of that team and Downers. And of course, we provide the HR partnering support to Downers. So that's LHD employed staff member who provides all of the HR input and function when issues are raised.
So this may not be a question for Mr. Robinson as it relates to the subcontracting of the security arrangements. I mean, I think you may have referenced it earlier in your remarks, but I missed it. Apologies. When did the HSU first raise concerns around the proposal to subcontract the security services out at Orange Base Hospital?
I can speak when the first concerns around the conflict of interest. Is that? Yep. So that was raised with me on the 25th of September 2025, and that followed an email that came from Thomas Robinson from the Health Services Union directly to me, saying, hey, could we please catch up? We've got some concerns. I rang him the following day, which is the 25th of September, and that's when it was initially raised with myself and the LHD.
And did you share those concerns?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what were those next steps that you and the department sort of did to address those concerns?
So the first step was that same day. So immediately we contacted the local Downer management. So that's the first port of escalation. So the local management team, I forwarded on my concerns. I raised what had been flagged with me by the union. I flagged my concerns that this alleged conflict of interest would be a conflict of interest, and I was interested to see how that was being managed, whether they were aware of it and whether they shared the view that it was a conflict of interest, as well as seeking some further advice from them as to the processes and policies that they feel were in place or were connected back to this situation. At the same time, I also alerted our internal auditor, as discussed briefly before. This would be a very similar process had it been within our organisation, just so that he was aware. I also contacted our project co contact, which is Pinnacle Healthcare, and contacted them directly, forwarded the same information on to them. They also shared the same concerns, so we all took it very serious from the moment that we were made aware of it. A request was made by the union to provide us to look into it, and by Downer to look into the process at the local management level, and they provided a response back to me. So I'll just check my notes here. They provided a response back to me on the 20th of October, and during that period, we continued to pursue that and find out what the story was. I was dissatisfied, as was the LHD and Project Co, with the initial response. We felt that it didn't reflect the seriousness of the situation as we saw it around those allegations, and so we went again through the appropriate escalation mechanism, which was back to Project Co, to ask them. So we met with them. They shared the same concerns. They felt that it needed to be further investigated and to be looked into appropriately and to be escalated. Martin Jackson of Pinnacle Healthcare then contacted the senior management of. A decision was made at that meeting that Project Co would lead that. The investigation and lead that process and ensure that it was appropriately and independently investigated. And he then connected with because it is their contract with Downer, he connected with the senior management at Downer to commence that process. From there, that was a full investigation was undertaken, as I mentioned, by the ethics and audit team of Downer, who are a separate and independent part of that organisation, who directly report to the board. Over that period, a number of the union raised the matter formally via the USCC on the 30th of October. and we during that period was acknowledged, and we continued to support that being followed through. Throughout this period, as an interim measure, Downer advised that they would not be engaging Mavasti Security during that period while the investigation was underway, which certainly we felt was appropriate. There was no confirmation at that point that there would be no future engagements, but we eventually got to that point. We received the final report. In the interim, I also received, the LHD received an email from the HSU industrial officer, Liana Hampson, on the 26th of November, expressing her concerns to our human resources manager, and gave a number of questions that she sought a response around, and I provided a response to that on the 10th of December, outlining exactly what I've just raised, the concerns that we had and we shared, and the steps that were being undertaken, and requested that we let this process go through that independent investigation while we awaited the outcome.
Thank you for that very detailed and comprehensive answer. You stated obviously the level of concern that seems it was almost unanimous amongst the stakeholders and the parties. Given that level of concern that was there, how could you ensure that this investigation was truly independent, given it was Downer investigating Downer, essentially? I mean, obviously, they're reporting to the board separately, but I'd be interested in how we ensured that process truly was an independent process, and if you could provide the committee of copies of any related correspondence between the parties in relation to this sort of on notice, that would be helpful.
Of course, absolutely. I can get those documents to you. We've got all of those available. I did touch on this briefly when a similar question came from the chair, but the way that this was investigated by senior management at Downer, in that they handed it to their independent audit and ethics team, is, as Mark Spittle referred earlier, is almost identical to the way that our LHD has and would deal with a similar investigation around a conflict of interest. So within our LHD, that goes to our internal audit team. If myself, my team, anyone raises anything with regard to an unmanaged or undeclared conflict of interest, it would go to our internal audit team. That is a completely independent group that is not able to be influenced or managed by anyone outside of the board of Western New South Wales LHD. So the fact that was the process that was undertaken, as well as the added level of oversight from Project Co, from Pinnacle Healthcare, who shared the very similar concerns, gave us confidence, and certainly that the outcome when we received the report demonstrated the seriousness with which it was taken, the independence with which it was looked into, and ultimately the outcomes where that relationship was discontinued and commitments made not to return there.
I think, respectfully, part of your answer, I have to disagree in that the process can never be identical, because we have, a public entity, which is, an LHD within New South Wales Health, compared to a private multinational company. So those two things are never going to be the same, given some of the interests that are there. But that sort of aside, I suppose I'm interested in how you've satisfied yourself through these sorts of inquiries that is sufficient, and why Health didn't also refer this to their own internal safety audit team that you've got there, or if you did, in fact.
We did. I'll hand over to Mark, sorry.
Sorry, perhaps it may be helpful, and just before I do a clarifying comment, so within our organisation, our internal audit functions goes to an independent audit and risk committee with an independent chair. It has board members sit on it, but it's independent in that sense, just to clarify. our internal auditor did walk through this process and maintained a close connection to it, was fully aware of it. At the time, they clearly didn't undertake the more detailed investigation. I think from the LHD's point of view, it is certainly true that this was an issue of seriousness, but also low materiality in terms of dollar value. And the process that Downer went through at Pinnacle's direction reflected the kind of process that we would expect on a serious but low dollar value issue of this type. It's also true that there are statutory bodies who the LHD would notify under situations like this as part of a normal course. We do that many times a year when there are matters of potential probity that are being investigated, and that was not initially the case because there was some debate or confusion around whether or not Downer was a public official, and in the end we concluded that in fact they were fulfilling the functions of a public official, and notification to those statutory bodies has occurred as the way that you'd expect. So there are checks and balances, which is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. That's all from me.
Thank you. Just one very last one from me, because we're out of time. Back to Ms. Smirkowska. Just following up an earlier line of questioning about the Aspergillus cluster back in April. I'm referring to an internal document that came out in the Parliamentary Order for Papers, and it specifically referred to 23 patients who had tested positive to Aspergillus at Calvary Mater between January 24 and April 25. And that document says with a number meeting the criteria for healthcare associated infections. How many patients met the criteria for healthcare associated infection?
I'm sorry, I have to get back to you on that one. I don't have the detail on that.
Thank you. That's right. Happy for it to be taken on notice. Okay. Thank you very much. We're out of time for this session. There were a number of questions taken on notice, and I suspect there'll be some supplementary questions from committee members as well. Thank you again for your participation in the inquiry. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Thank you for taking the time to appear before the inquiry again. We do need to repeat the swearing in, so could you please state your name, position, title, and take either the oath or the affirmation?
I'm Vicky Rigg. I'm a director of the Novacare Group companies, and I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
James Ward, Director of Novacare Group of Companies. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. My first question is, I understand that a new management services agreement has been put in place since we last spoke to you, with Actor Care now taking over facilities management responsibilities. Can you talk us through what that change entails and what the rationale was?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely answer your question. I think it's worth giving the committee an update on the status of the project.
Please.
I'll answer your question first and then maybe give you, I've just got 4 points I think would be valuable for you to hear.
So, Ms. Could you just move the microphone a little bit closer? It's just a bit hard to hear.
That way?
Yeah, even a little bit more. We're used to loud politicians, sorry.
Does that work?
That's better, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, go ahead.
So it's not a facilities management contract, it's a management services agreement. As has always been the case with Novacare. Novacare has never had any employees, and the role of managing the Novacare companies has always been outsourced since the project started back in 2005. Unfortunately, we had Plenary Group who've been working on this project with us since 2014. Their contract came to an end at the end of April, and they were unwilling to extend the contract. Largely, the excuse they gave excuse is the wrong word. The reason that they were unwilling to extend the contract was because they felt that the culture on site was a culture that they didn't want to put their employees into. The on-site representative, Michael Caldwell, resigned his position at Plenary Group, citing psychosocial and bullying concerns. And so Plenary's view was that not only was that a concern, but also they've been working for 12 years to try and provide the best services possible to the people of Newcastle, and formed the conclusion that what they were doing clearly wasn't working, so it was time for a change. So we have replaced Plenary with a group called Active Infrastructure. They are a team of people who are experienced in PPPs. The gentleman who's taken over as the project representative used to be the project representative on the New South Wales Momentum Trains PPP. He's also held similar roles in PPPs in prisons, on roads in New Zealand, and has 20 or 30 years of infrastructure and both construction and project management experience. So he's incredibly well experienced for this kind of role, and is also experienced in managing projects where the relationships are broken down like they have here. Just a further update on the project. As we mentioned, just I suppose reinforcing, this project was entered into over 20 years ago. The government selected Abbey Group, Honeywell and Medirest to deliver the PPP, which and Novacare's role is very much to represent that consortium and to provide the funding that financed the original construction of the new buildings. It's clearly a complex contractual structure, and it's very rigid, and it was effectively the rigidity means that it's clearly no longer appropriate for the changing needs of the clinical needs at the hospital. I think 20 years ago, no one could really have envisaged how clinical service delivery would change across hospitals. And while there is a change mechanism in the contract to allow for changes in use, that requires agreement between the parties. And unfortunately, on this contract, we've reached a point where there just is no agreement between the parties. Similarly, Honeywell's operating based on a price that was set 20 years ago. And unlike public hospitals where budgets change to reflect what's happening in the market, things like COVID, supply chain issues, escalation in construction prices that we read about in the press every day, there is no mechanism for that change within this contract. So in real terms, Honeywell is operating based on the same price that they were paid, that they agreed to be paid 20 years ago. That's the PPP structure, and it's not a criticism, but it is a reflection of how these PPPs work. And our experience is very much that if you were to re-let this contract today, it would be significantly more expensive than what Honeywell is currently being paid. So, as directors of Novacare, James and I are obviously required to act in the best interests of the Novacare companies and the Novacare trusts. And over the last 5 years, we've spent significant time and money trying to ensure that both HAC and Calvary Mater are happy with the performance of the project. Despite all our efforts, there are still significant disputes, and we still have a dissatisfied client. And at this point, we believe what's best for Novacare and for the patients and the staff within the Newcastle marketer is for a managed return of Novacare to state ownership. And that's why on the 13th of March, we met with senior health officials and we offered to transfer the project back to the state for $2. And we followed that up with a formal offer to them on the 13th of April. Given the current disputes that are in place at the hospital, the cost of managing the formal correspondence that we receive and the lack of progress towards resolution of those disputes, the only viable alternative for Novacare is likely to be voluntary administration. We've been undertaking contingency planning with advisors to, in case that should be necessary. Now, in our view, the most important thing is that this project transitions back into state hands in a planned and coordinated way. We can't envisage a circumstance where this at some point doesn't land back in state hands, which I'm sure will make some members of the committee happy. And so that's why we made the offer to the state to transfer it back for $2 so that we can do it in a coordinated and managed way. At a minimum, voluntary administration would mean that significant additional costs flow out of this project to advisors that could otherwise be reinvested back into the hospital. And in a worst case scenario, we're informed by our advisors that both Honeywell and Medirest could suspend the performance of their services to the hospital, and that's obviously something that we don't want to happen. I appreciate that this is an awful lot of information and probably not what you were expecting from this part of the hearing. But I note that a number of our stakeholders aren't aware of the offer that we made to the state, and they'll be hearing this for the first time. But given the importance of this committee and your decision making, we thought it was important to disclose this now, so you can take it into consideration in whatever you do next.
Thank you. I appreciate the update. You want to ask something?
You go, that's fine. Chair.
Oh, that's all right. I wanted to ask a follow-up question. I've still got my head in the change of the management services agreement first, and the previous manager. I think in your answer to my question, you said had left citing psychosocial hazards. I imagine that those psychosocial hazards did not evaporate overnight on the departure of one person. So I suppose what measures have been put in place to make this a safe role for a new person to come into?
So under the contract, we're not obliged to have a representative on site, and for most of the term of the contract, we haven't had a representative on site. It's only over the last, I think, approximately 3 years, we chose to put someone on site hoping that would improve relationships, give a better ability for us to work in partnership with HAC and with Calvary Mater. So the safeguard we've put in place is not having someone on site, so that role of project representative is now effectively an off-site role, and he will attend site whenever required to, for meetings and to ensure that services are being provided in the way that they should be.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll come back to your update now, and certainly for myself, that is the first time that I'm hearing that you made an offer to transfer back to health. What are the current liabilities associated with the project that would also then transfer to New South Wales Health?
So there are, I can't give you an exact answer, but the key, the way it would work is the projects with Honeywell and Medirest would remain on foot, and so the disputes with Honeywell that are being flowed up to the state don't go away. It just means that the state would have a direct ability to resolve those disputes rather than the dispute having to be a three-way dispute between the state, Novacare and Honeywell. And then the real, I suppose, liability in the sense of, I think what you're asking is that there are bonds outstanding, which are kind of factored into the whole PPP, and I think there's about $50 million worth of bonds still outstanding, and those bonds are repaid through the payment mechanism. And so it will be the bondholders who make the decision effectively as to what happens next if this goes into voluntary administration. Now, those bonds that liability doesn't pass to the state. The liability remains within the Novacare entities. They're bankruptcy remote entities. That's the way these projects are all set up. So it would still be a decision of the state how to deal with those liabilities moving forward.
Okay, so I'm trying to exactly clarify this. So the true cost to the state is not $2. It would incorporate the current disputes as well as the question of the $50 million.
So those disputes are already there. So those disputes have been passed up to the state. So there is notice of arbitration issued from Honeywell to Novacare, and a similar matching notice of arbitration issued from Novacare to the state. So those disputes kind of are the same regardless of whether or not you sit in the state's current position or sit in Novacare's position, because of the way the way these contracts all fit together. So the key outstanding liability would be the bonds.
Thank you. And I'm assuming from the way that you've shared this with us that offer was rejected?
The state's response was effectively a preliminary no, subject to potentially requiring more information, but we're not sure what that additional information is.
Can I? So just on that, just for clarity. So it was, I think you said in your opening remarks, March and April this year. Can I just get the dates clarified?
13th of March.
Yes.
And the 13th of April, I think.
Okay. Tomorrow's the 13th of May, so there we go. Maybe it's something else. When you say the offer was made to government, who exactly do you put that to? Is it the Health Secretary? Is it the Minister, the Treasurer?
We asked where it should go, and we were told to send it to Tracy McCosker and Emma Sculander.
Okay. And any correspondence you've had back from Health in relation to that issue has been from one of those two individuals?
All from Tracy McCosker.
Sorry?
It's all been from Tracy McCosker.
Okay. Did you want to ask? No. Okay. So a preliminary no, and then seeking more information, or
so we had a further meeting with them on Monday.
Yesterday.
With advisors, just to, I suppose, ensure that they understood what a voluntary administration looks like, if that's the path we end up going down, and then to do some preliminary planning for a voluntary administration should we land in that position. And so there were a few questions that came out of that, and I believe I wasn't at that meeting, but my understanding from the meeting is that there's still some conversation ongoing.
Okay, because I don't believe you were here earlier, but I did ask some more questions about the abatements and issues around sort of the breach notices, which did come up when we had the day in Newcastle a couple of months ago. And certainly the evidence this morning was around that they're still trying to work through those issues and concerns, I guess, around what happens if Novacare does have to go into voluntary administration. But there certainly wasn't any information provided to the committee around the evidence that you're giving. So thank you for being transparent and putting that on the record. It would have probably been nice to have known that earlier when we had the health officials here, but I'll just leave it at that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. Are there questions from government members of the committee?
So, just so I can clarify my understanding, so you, as a result of all this, you mentioned receivership. Is that as a result of the contract being so dysfunctional that it's impossible to deliver the service under the parameters of the contract?
There are a lot of different factors involved in looking at the kind of the position that Novacare finds itself in, and the future, I suppose, of Novacare, which is what, as directors, we have to consider. ultimately, the level of disputes currently outstanding and the lack of progress towards resolving them puts significant potential risk on Novacare, which we obviously have to consider as directors. But beyond that, the cost involved in the cost of legal advisors, the cost of finding a replacement for plenary group who would be willing to take on the role given the current status of the project, means that we're currently spending more in costs than we are receiving in revenue. And these projects, when they're put together, they're very complex financial models which come up with how much the project is paid every month for providing services. And it's kind of, that payment is made up of the amount of money that Honeywell and Medirest said they would need to be paid for this month, which was set back 20 years ago. But then also the amount of money that needs to be paid to the bondholders to repay the bonds. And then an amount of money is set aside, which is supposed to be the money that is available to run Novacare, so the cost of running Novacare, and then supposedly some profit for Novacare. There's been no profit within Novacare for a number of years, and we've now hit the point where our costs are exceeding the kind of the allowance for both that profit and for the costs that were previously envisaged for how much it would cost to run this business.
So, in effect, using this as an example, of course, it's not necessarily generic across the board, but the government's effectively got to make a decision about whether or not it outsources its responsibilities and tries to cut costs by giving it to a provider like Novacare, or whether it wants to insource potentially where the extra costs, notwithstanding the evidence we've heard before about waste, and what you're telling us is that if you can't make it work, then the only way health's going to make it work is by wearing presumably what will be some sort of extra cost, but at the benefit of perhaps less disputes, or being able to more effectively manage disputes and provide a higher level of care. Would that be a reasonable assessment?
I'm not, it's very hard to be general, and I'm not sure that, I don't think this is really a question about whether health outsources or insources. I think the issue here is that there is a significant dispute around the scope of the services that are required to be provided under the PPP. Until that dispute is resolved, and a really good example of that is a question of who is responsible for adding humidity control to the HVAC. So Honeywell's view and our view is that the contract requires Honeywell to replace, like for like, the air conditioning that was in the building that was built last century. It's not within their scope, and it was never priced within their scope to upgrade that to include humidity control and whatever else is needed to meet today's climate and today's clinical requirements.
And just to clarify, sorry, Ms. Rigg, that contractual obligation is between Honeywell and...
So it's the same contractual obligation. There is one between the state and Novacare,
yep.
And that same contractual obligation then exists in a contract between Novacare and Honeywell.
Uh-huh.
So the way these projects are put together, lawyers spend an awful lot of time negotiating contracts, and it all starts with the project deed, which is the document that sits between the state and the consortium, in this case being Novacare. Then the lawyers all agree how those obligations will be passed down to the people, to the companies that the government actually selected to provide these services. So in the case of maintenance here, that was Honeywell. And so the state's lawyers and Novacare's lawyers and Honeywell's lawyers at the time would all have sat down and agreed the terms that...
But you see, sorry to interrupt, but by its very nature, I understand the way you're explaining this, but by its nature, that implies to me it is ultimately a function of cost, because one party is trying to attenuate its costs by contractually binding a private sector operator to a certain parameter, be it Honeywell or Novacare, that's unsustainable, so you get lawyers involved. So at some point, it's got to boil down to cost, hasn't it? Because otherwise there'd be no dispute.
Yeah, I mean, the dispute is all around who's going to pay for it. I think my understanding was that everybody agreed that what upgrades were required, but perhaps that's not the case either. But yes, it does come down to a question of who is going to pay for the upgrades, and was it included in the original scope of the contract, or is this an additional request that's being made of the project, and therefore something that should be kind of paid for as an additional cost?
So wouldn't it make sense for the government to do a cost-benefit modelling analysis on how much it could save in a pure dollar term by maintaining some sort of a contractual arrangement with a private operator based on the level of care that they want to provide, and then making a decision about whether it's worth it or not in the light of everything that's happened?
I don't know that. I'm not sure I completely follow, but ultimately there was a contract that was entered into. So yes, it's obviously within everybody's ability to renegotiate a contract and request changes to a contract. But ultimately, there was a contract that set out that Honeywell would be providing these services for 25 years.
How much do you estimate you would have spent on legals, just Novacare alone?
Millions.
And the government?
You'd have to ask the government.
But so just back to your point on the public sector comparison, when these contracts are entered into, that is exactly something, a piece of analysis that is done by government. They do a public sector comparison, i.e. what is the cost of delivering this under the public sector?
So that would have been done when entering into the... Yeah,
100%.
And would you have been privy to that as a provider? Would you have been privy to that modelling?
You bid a number back, and then the state, I mean, I'm sure the Auditor General who would have done a review would have done that comparison, and the contract, it'll be there.
I think it's...
And is it your contention that that's out of date, which is the parameters are out of date?
No, I'm just saying that comparison you're referring to has been done once and was done at entering into the contract.
Yeah.
And if I could just jump in, so your evidence would be that the reason for the PPP was that government saw this was a cheaper way to provide the health services?
I think there are a number of reasons why governments choose to use PPPs. I think my experience of successful PPPs, and there are a number of successful PPPs around the country and also overseas, is that yes, ultimately it has to pass the cost-benefit test, but generally there is also an acceptance that having the private sector involved in delivery of infrastructure can give you a better outcome when it comes to on time and on budget delivery of that infrastructure, and also having the ability to bring kind of specialists in to deliver these services. Obviously, political views change over time as to whether or not these projects are successful or not, and obviously in the case of the Newcastle Mater, for a number of reasons it hasn't been successful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there no further questions?
No, I don't think so. It's fine.
That's right. Thank you again for appearing today. If there are supplementary questions from committee members, the Secretariat will be in contact with you about those.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
For those watching online, this brings us to the end of today's proceedings, and thanks for your interest.